Call the adjourned meeting of the Paramount City Council to order. Woohoo, echoing. We have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Guillen?
Here.
Councilmember Lemons?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Here.
Mayor Hansen?
Here. City Council public comment updates, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is from the June 4th council meeting. Mind you, June 4th, it wasn't from last Tuesday. Those will be handled at the next council meeting. The first resident that spoke there was Mr. Jose De Leon. His concern was about air quality monitoring. The city manager addressed that issue during the June 4th meeting. The second resident that spoke was Mr. Gerald Serta. He had issues with Calmet Waste Services. In response, we contacted Calmet on behalf of Mr. Serta. The problematic trash bin that he had an issue with was removed and replaced. We also discussed with Calmet management the courteousness of the phone operator, and that was addressed with them as well. Thirdly, Ms. Eleanor Mendoza spoke about the cleanliness of the route for the upcoming Heinz DES parade, and that is on Colorado Avenue. Staff will review the conditions, and we've already done that, and we are taking appropriate action to make sure it's as clean as possible. The last resident that spoke at that meeting, again, this is June the 4th, was Mr. Luis Baptista, and he had a request for lapel pins, in addition to him updating the council on the soccer program. Staff is discussing this request with Mr. Baptista, and we will report back to the City Council at a later date. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Public comments.
Yes, sir.
Go down order a little, go ahead.
Yeah, before we go into public comments, I wanted to allow an opportunity for our lieutenant to speak. Lieutenant Oscar Barragan has requested that he speak. We just got news late last week that Lieutenant Barragan sadly is going to be leaving Paramount. This is his last week, so he requested to say a few words before, and then he physically has to leave to go over to the Lakewood Station for an event there that the sheriff is at. So with that, I'll call up Lieutenant Oscar Barragan, who we're definitely going to miss. Oscar?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'd first, before I begin, I want to thank everyone for this opportunity to come say a few words. I know we're at a busy schedule, but I feel that I want to say these things to the residents, to you guys. So if you don't mind, could I turn and face the audience, please?
Okay.
Okay, so I just first want to say thank you very much to all the residents of Paramount for welcoming me, allowing me to do what I needed to do to help the city out. But most of all, you guys made me feel like family. You made me feel like I was part of the city, which I'm really thankful for. But with that, I want to start off, I'd like to thank a few people that I've obviously spent some time with, relationships I've developed. And I want to start off with John. I want to first off thank John because I was given this opportunity from John. Commander Wallach brought me over. We had an interview. We talked about things, and then John had the confidence in Commander Wallach to give me this opportunity. Could have chosen many other lieutenants. This is a coveted position. So I hope that I've done a good job enough to, for John to recognize that I gave all the effort I could. I made everything happen that I wanted to, but it wouldn't have happened unless John allowed me to, and thank you, John, for that. Second, I want to thank Dr. Ruth Perez, and I tell you, we can't get things done anywhere without relationships, and we all know that, right? And I was able to develop a great relationship with Dr. Perez. We had each other's cell phones. We were calling each other any time of the day, the middle of the night, concerns with, text a tip, concerns with any information she received and information I received. And she was never too busy for me and vice versa. So with that, I just want to thank her because she didn't have to be so open with me. She didn't have to develop that relationship with me. She didn't have to be like that, but she was. She had the confidence in me that I had the best interest in mind of the students, of the people of Paramount. And like I said, there's like the old saying, a city's only as good as their schools. And I think truly that we're very fortunate that our schools are what they are. As hard as all the staff, the administrators of the schools, I saw it, how much they're engaged and how much they want to better the city. And I know there's people from other cities wanting to come here to the school district, so we should all be thankful that we have Dr. Perez there. Next, I want to thank Sergeant Aiello. And the reason I want to thank Sergeant Aiello is he made my job easy. He did everything I asked him to do. And that, you know, as a leader on the department, as an administrator, I have a thing that, you know, nothing should be small enough to do, or nothing shouldn't be important enough to do. And one of the things that Sergeant Aiello always provided was just a simple yes. No matter what I asked him to do, it was yes. No matter what, yes, taken care of. And he does a lot for the city. And I mean, from budgeting the overtime, you know, being there for the deputies, and all the things that come with it. You know, I could be here all day talking about it, but without him, I couldn't have done the things I did. And with that, I think that me leaving, he's going to take my place. He's going to be the acting lieutenant here at the city. And what's nice about it, you're not going to skip a beat. You know, I could tell you're going to be in good hands with him. He shares the same philosophies I do. He has a great relationships with everybody in the city that I do. So that's going to be a good thing for the city. And then I'd like to thank the deputies of Paramount. Obviously, without them, I couldn't do the things I do either. I called different deputies. They can tell you. Residents would call me at 1 o'clock in the morning to tell me about, you know, there's cars hanging out in front of my house. Can you send somebody? I'd call them. They'd go. Anytime I needed information from the deputies, they'd call me right back. And again, I go back to the same thing. They would always just tell me yes, no matter what it was, whether it was homeless, whether it was traffic, whether it was parking issues, whatever it was, I just got a yes all the time. And then I also wanted to thank, you know, the council and the commission for their support. Every time I went to council meetings and any issues I had, I never had any pushback. Same with the commission. We had a great relationship with everybody, so I want to thank you. Thank you all. Thank you back there for your support. Then I want to thank Maggie Matson and the Paramount City staff from Public Safety. I think that they do a phenomenal job. And when I tell you guys this, you know, I go back to, I work for the Sheriff's Department. I don't work for the City of Paramount. I don't work for the school district. I'm only speaking the truth when I say this. You guys have no idea how fortunate you are, how much the city cares about you. From the council to city manager to public safety to parks, recreation to everywhere. Like when I first got here, I remember Mr. Yanez coming up here, one of my first meetings, and talking about racquetball courts. And I was like, racquetball courts? They care about racquetball courts. I mean, the city does. I remember Mr. Serta came up here, and Mr. Serta's talking about a dog park. And I was like, a dog park? And that was like my first meeting here. And I was thinking, wow. And you know what? That was the talk after. We need to take care of this. We need to take care of that. You know, there was an issue on Hunsaker where there was a parking issue with semi-trucks parking on the Compton side. It was taken care of. Like literally overnight, it's taken care of. I know, I'm telling you, where I live, that doesn't happen. And you guys are very fortunate to have the people you have. And with that being said, the last person I want to thank is Adriana Lopez. And the things that have gone on, and you know, there's things that have happened behind the scenes that you guys don't know, you're not, you know, we don't talk about. They couldn't happen without her support. And I want to thank Adriana because from the time I got here, she gave me the respect, the commitment, the support, every word I can think of to make this successful. There was never any issues of who's in charge, who's not in charge. We work together. Like, I am not above her, she's not above me. We work together. She addressed any issues with city personnel. I addressed any issues with deputy personnel. We never overstepped our boundaries. We just had a great, great relationship. And I tell you, there is no way that we could have done the job we've been doing without her. Because you guys know, like I said, it's all about relationships. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples really quick. When it came down to support, for example, I'm going to bring up football games, okay? To me, there's only 5 home football games a year, right? So we said, hey, we're going to commit special assignment deputies to the football games. Why? Because we don't want to have any problems, whether it's before the games, after the games, right? Whether, because it's whoever comes to the games, you know, visitors, whether it's issues with the residents and the parking or whatever the case may be, fights over at the Starbucks, things like that. So when I spoke to Adriana about it, she didn't even bat an eye. It was like, no problem. We made all the special assignment deputies work Friday nights. We worked till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. We hired extra people for security. And I can personally tell you, I would go sit on the corner of Rosecrans and Downey and watch the kids getting out, going home. And there was this sense of security. They saw police officers everywhere. They're walking, they're getting picked up by their parents, whatever they were doing. But I could see they were happy. They weren't worried about anything going wrong. Another one is the example of the graduation. You guys can see the last couple of years, we got this new program where we went over to Bianchi Theaters and want to thank them for their support also. But we asked them for their parking lot because there was a lot of issues with parking for graduation. As you well know, how many people show up to these graduations, right? You know, between 4,000 or 5,000 people show up. And it affects the residents. Obviously, we have to worry about people breaking into cars, people keep leaving cars unlocked, whatever issues come with it. Well, when I spoke to Adriana about it, I told her this is what we want to do. We want to get the parking lot here. We want to do this. We're going to get shuttle buses to shuttle people over. Again, didn't even bat an eye. No problem. It's about the residents. It's about, you know, what's good for the people here. And I tell you, I was speaking to Jesse Flores, who's head of security over with the school district in this last graduation. And he started asking me like, oh, you know, Oscar, like how many deputies did you guys hire? And what did you guys do? And this and this. And when we started talking, he realized how much money it takes to do this, you know? And at the end of the day, I told him, you know, Jesse, I go, Adriana's not concerned about the money when it comes to this. I'm not concerned about the money when it comes to this. And it's all because, I tell you, we're never going to see what we prevented. We're never going to see what didn't happen. We're never going to, any of that stuff, which is good. Because I got to see, I stood in the parking lot, and that's the way I am. I like to see what's happening, why is it happening this way. And when I got to see the parking lot was well lit, and everybody was parking and getting on the buses and then dropping them off, and they're coming back to their cars. They're not scared of anything or something missing from their cars. It's a great feeling. And it's good to see that because I can tell you, I've gone to neighboring cities in Lakewood District, in Lakewood Stations area, where there will be 1 deputy there, 2 deputies there, 1 or 2 city personnel, and not here. Okay, so again, I want to thank Adriana for her support, and hopefully, you know, with Dino, I know they have a great relationship and it's going to continue the same way. But I just want to thank all of you for your support, and hopefully things continue this way. Thank you.
Lieutenant, we thank you for your service here, and we realize you guys have a tough job, but hopefully we made it a little bit easier for you. So thank you very much for your service, and best of luck on your move that you're doing. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, now public comments.
Yes, sir. Our first public comment card is from Dr. Max Martinez, and he'd like to say thank you. Dr. Martinez?
I don't know if I need an introduction, but my name's Max Martinez, Paramount boy.
Here you go.
Past president of the Chamber of Commerce, more than once. I think I didn't do it right the first time, so they made me do it a couple more times. Current treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce, and so I'm here today to just thank you. I know you guys have a difficult task of creating a budget, you know, for this great city. But I want to thank you for the support that you've given to the Paramount Chamber of Commerce, you know, the past years. I assure you that I'm here to assure you that you guys get the best bang for your buck. I know you'll hear in a second that you know the contribution that you guys give to the Paramount Chamber of Commerce is between 12 and 50% of our budget. And I know other cities rely on a lot more money, and with our expenses, I would love to be here and ask you for more. But I want to show you that with the great staff that we have and the volunteers' hard work that they put on time, we can make this work. And not only that, but to continue to have the idea that the city is one of the best or business-friendly cities in the community, and any business would love to have a business here in this community. I know, but a lot of you, I know, will recall that it wasn't always like that. Several years ago, a few great minds got together. Actually, I can think of one of the great minds that sat up there and was one of the relatives of one of you council members, and I won't mention his name, but I looked up to him, that we got together and tried to make a team together, a business team together, and work cohesively, and it worked. And it didn't stop there. The school district got involved, and you guys are just working together and making the city just an absolutely wonderful city. So again, I'm just here to thank you for all the support that you give in the Paramount Chamber of Commerce, and I hope you continue to do that. And I assure you that with your support and with the hard work that we have, we're going to make the city even a lot better. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, and happy belated birthday to you, and enjoy your concert that you're going to.
Shh, thank you.
I know about that. Okay.
Our next speaker's card, Mr. Mayor, is from Ms. Barbara Carlson of the Chamber, and she would also like to say thank you.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Hansen, and City staff. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you. On behalf of the Paramount Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank you for the support that the city has provided the Chamber in fiscal 2019. It's such a joy to work with the city on economic development. It's our goal to encourage, support the businesses in Paramount. And though we work with a wide variety of businesses, most effectively, your support is for the small businesses in Paramount. For the money that you provide, the Chamber, you in effect receive the benefits of 2 to 3 full-time staff members, as well as 15 committed executives and 12 volunteers in our ambassadors, who all are devoting 10 hours a month or more to promote business in Paramount. I have submitted our report to you outlining our activities and the support that we give to Paramount. Our membership fees only account for about 22% of our working budget, and your support provides another 12 to 15% of our budget, which helps us to maintain our location and give that accessibility to the whole community. We're a resource not only to businesses, but to the residents as well. We often get phone calls requesting referrals and voicing concerns. Many times residents will call us to find out who they should call for the different services and information in and about Paramount. We always help connect them to the right government offices and public services, as well as local businesses. Paramount is not known for big box companies. We do have a Walmart and a Home Depot, but for the most part, Paramount is supported by small businesses, family businesses. And as we see the changes in the landscape of Paramount, I hear from people multiple times a month, how can I start a business in Paramount? So we provide in our office access to everyone, free business counseling. There's a unique and committed relationship that I find among our businesses here in town. And I want to share a recent story about the support that our chamber members give to each other. I received a call from Cafe Corleone on a Thursday evening. Their pizza oven had broke down, and they were potentially going to lose a lot of their business on the weekend. So I placed a call to Tony Manos over at Domino's and asked for a referral. Well, he not only gave the referral, but he called his repair guy and asked them directly to go to Cafe Corleone and take care of the oven. This is the kind of working relationship that the businesses have here, and I know it comes from the support that the chamber gives and that well-being, that support that we have here and the community support that we get from you. So I want to thank you for all of your support.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Artie, and he wants to recap the last few weeks. Artie?
Hello, everyone. I want to talk about, for the few weeks, I always go back home and I try to digest what happens. It's a lot to take in all these meetings, but and I hope I'm wrong, and if I am, I'll be the first to apologize, but just the optics of the last few weeks have not been good. From how I see it, there was a spike in the pollution, and it was reported that there's no one watching. There was no one watching the monitors, and now we're going to get someone watching the monitors. At best, that's gross negligence, gross overlook, gross oversight. Period. Even if you're a cheerleader of Paramount. Then Ms. Martinez steps down, and then there's rumors or murmurs that it's going to be City Council that gets to decide who sits in that seat. From an optics level, that doesn't look good. Even no matter what side you're on, there is a strong opposition to that. We should allow the people to decide who sits in that seat. Someone elected her, and someone that needs to get elected to be in that position. No one should be playing kingmaker, and no one should have a red carpet to a seat of the people. And the idea that's being pushed around that people are getting bullied, or the city councilors are getting bullied, or the staff is getting bullied, is ridiculous. People don't want to be here and be angry. People don't want that. I don't want to come an hour early from work to express my frustrations. I'd rather be home. But when people are saying something, then we probably should listen. Even if they're opposite, against you, you should always let them speak and let the people decide for that seat. The idea that people just want democracy, transparency, and accountability. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any one of those things. And if I can quote my mother, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Jose De Leon, and he wants to discuss the special election. Mr. De Leon?
Hello, good afternoon to all of you, public. I had to make a sacrifice to be here. I have to go back to my job, but it's part of life. I am with my antecessor that he say about how you guys been failing in a democrat system, because this is a democrat system. Transparency, representation, surprised me, and I understand about the budget to spend the money. But surprised me, Mrs. Lemon mentioned in the last special meeting that she spoke with over 100 constituents, but I don't see them here. Also surprised me that you, Hofmeier, you, Hansen, say that, oh, we cannot have a vacancy. We have to fill it up by appointment somewhere. But wait a minute. You guys been robbing stamp all the time. All of you, 5-0 until Mrs. Gillen got elected, and then we can see like 4-1, which is a healthy system, because it cannot be any system that is approving any amendment or any policy. It doesn't work in a democratic system, but that's how you guys run it. I was here in 2016 when you guys decide to go for another almost 2 years, and we asked you, a bunch of residents, we asked you to have elections. We asked you last week to have a special election. Even, like I mentioned before, if you guys want to leave the vacancy, yeah, because we know that it's going to be 3-1. We know that all the time. So I know you already had decided way before the special meeting, but I want the people know, the residents of Paramount, I want they know what you guys been doing. You've been failing to us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last speaker's card, Mr. Mayor, is from Mr. Juan J. Nieves Jr. He wants to discuss approval of murals in Paramount.
Well, I'm, as introduced, Juan J. Nieves, 24 years old, living on Paramount, the residency of Madison, the corner on Madison and Downey. And I'm just here to represent a lot of the unspoken for artists and, well, the youth that carries on most of the culture or newfound culture that's here in Paramount. And an issue that I would just like to bring up is the lack of culture that is in Paramount, even though there is a always spoken culture that's ever present in Paramount that I would like to make visually apparent here in Paramount. And to you, the City Council, I'd just like to ask approval for, and this is not to ask for any funding, this is not to ask for any special treatment of such, just only the approval to put art in Paramount, maybe to open a gallery, maybe honestly just to put art where it's available to everybody in Paramount. There's been brought to my attention that there's a lot of open walls in Paramount that are very blank, and in Paramount itself, the city is fairly colorless, as blatantly as I can put it. And there's a lot of artists here in Paramount who are willing to put the time, the resources to fill the city with art and to, make visual the ever-growing culture of Paramount. And honestly, that's all I've come here to ask for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Further?
No, that was the last comment. That was the last comment, and if it is the council's pleasure, we can have Mr. Johnson, our Community Services and Recreation Director, meet with Mr. Neves and explain to him some of the opportunities coming up
There's quite
with art
a few
galleries.
things
Yeah,
going
if
on,
it's-
possibly.
if
You
it's
might
okay.
want to meet with
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Johnson,
say,
yes.
that somebody, if we could, I was going
And
to,
start the dialogue
yeah,
about this.
because we do have a proposed art gallery to open, so perfect timing for you to come forward.
John, when somebody asked last year about a mural, and you guys were going to look into whatever, permitting that,
Yeah.
how far did we get on looking into those
We-
murals? Because I know that had been brought up
Sure,
before.
that had been brought up. We didn't, so we will resuscitate that, if you will, and have the discussion
Resuscitate.
again about what the council's desire is to, for public murals. In the past, what we've done is we have not really painted walls, but we've hired an artist to not do a mural, I'm trying to think of the word, kind of blend in the natural color of the stone, if you will. There's several walls,
those.
and they've been very effective. So that's been basically what we've done. But going down the venture of actually doing murals, we've never done that. If that's the council's pleasure, we can start looking into that. If there are guidelines other cities use to approve of murals, just
Yeah,
say
I
the
don't think
word
it would
and I
hurt
can-
to expand upon it, because we did look at artists. We actually inquired at the high school and asked the art department to get involved for the boxes that we were doing with all
Correct.
the art murals on
remember that,
those.
yeah.
And then I remember they, again, talked to the art department at the high school about the mural that went up at Starbucks. So if there's.
Oh, the one over the tile
and-
one.
Yeah,
Tile.
and so we tried to get them involved in that, especially with the Tag Artist Guild being, so prominent there. So
Okay.
I think it's something we've always been open to, and now it seems that there's some leadership in the art communities that, maybe we'll have somebody specific to talk to and locations that they have in mind, and I know I'm totally open to it.
Yeah, and plus all the utility boxes and everything, those have been kind of decorated, you might say, but yeah, that'd be fine.
For sure. Well, I
Okay.
have a consensus. We'll move forward, start looking into that, and maybe come up with some guidelines and some direction, maybe take it to the commission or something, so.
Okay,
Okay, all righty, thank you.
okay.
And that's our last speaker, Mr. Mayor.
That was it. Okay, we're to the item number 1, consent calendar, receive and file.
Second.
Been moved by Hoffmeyer, seconded by Lemons to approve the consent calendar. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer. Yes. Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 2, resolution number 19.024.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I interrupt? I apologize. Nope, actually, I don't. Forgive me, I looked at the wrong line. Move forward. Thank you.
Okay. We're approving the blanket authority to file applications for grant funds from Los Angeles County Regional Park and Open Space District for Measure A funding for projects and programs. Have staff report, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, our first item deals with grant funding for parks. Since 1992, the city's received grant money annually for park improvements through a county ballot measure. Well, actually, the money is running out this year. In place of it is a new ballot measure that was approved by the voters of LA County back in 2016. Although the funding was held up for a couple of years, it's now become available. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Community Services Recreation Director, David Johnson, to walk you through the item. Dave?
Thank you, John. Mayor and council members. So for over 20 years, Proposition A, the grants that John referred to, came through us from Los Angeles County and assisted all the cities in the county with a revenue source to make local park improvements. These two Proposition A programs, one was passed in 1992, one in 96, both began to sunset, and so the county did put a measure on the ballot, Measure A, in 2016 to replace this valuable park source. Measure A was approved by the voters, and it will provide competitive grants and an annual per capita grant program for cities to use for local park improvement projects. As John mentioned, unfortunately, for the first couple of years, that those grants were held up in litigation. That litigation is now over, and the county was successful, and those monies will now start flowing to the various cities in the county. On the per capita side, the city of Paramount currently is eligible for approximately $275,000 per year to fund local park projects, though, again, this amount will vary from year to year based upon the revenue stream from the per parcel tax that they will impose. So Resolution 19024 gives the city manager the authority to file applications for our annual allocation of Measure A funds. The city council will continue to provide direction and approval of the use of these funds through our budget process and identify the funding sources for those projects. For fiscal year 2020, as an example, we have in the budget the pool replastering at Paramount Park Pool, as well as some deck replacement. We had anticipated the Measure A funds becoming available, and we have $250,000 in this year's budget for that work coming from Measure A. When competitive grants come about, those are going to be coming from different pots of money within Measure A. We will come back to the council specifically asking for authority to apply for specific Measure A competitive grants. With that, I'm recommending approval of Resolution 19024, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Second.
Been moved by Hoffmeyer, seconded by Lemons, that we approve resolution number 19.024. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian?
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Hansen?
Yes. Item number 3, resolution number 19.026, approving applications for Proposition 68 grant funds for California Drought, Water, Parks, Climate, Coastal Protection, and Outdoor Access for All Act of 2018. Have staff report, please.
Yes, sir. This is another item regarding grant funds for public projects. This one is from a statewide ballot measure that was first approved by voters last year. Now, for this particular grant application, we like to apply for money to continue building the different segments of the bikeway project that will eventually run through the city from the LA River all the way through to Bellflower and hook up with the San Gabriel River. So with that, I will turn it over to our Public Works Director, Adriana Figueroa, to go over the item. Adriana?
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, as John indicated, in June of 2018, California voters approved Proposition 68, which was called the Parks, Environment, and Water Bond. The resolution before you would allow for the filing of applications for local assistance funds through the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy. The West Santa Ana Branch Bike Trail Project is a multi-phase project that runs along the railroad corridor known as the West Santa Ana Branch. The West Santa Ana Branch Rail Corridor cuts diagonally through the middle of the city from city limit to city limit. Phase 3 and Phase 4 of this project are eligible to apply for funding under this program. Phase 3 is between Garfield Avenue and Rosecrans Avenue along the West Santa Ana right-of-way, and Phase 4 is between the Los Angeles River and Garfield Avenue. The estimated project cost for Phase 3 is $4.5 million, and Phase 4 is $3.9 million. The attached resolution, resolution number 19026, will authorize the submittal of applications under this proposition grant funding program through the Rivers and Mountains Conservancy. At this time, it is recommended that the City Council read by title only and adopt Resolution Number 19026. That concludes my report, and I'll be able to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Move the item.
Second. Motion by Lemon, second by Hoffmeyer, read by title only and adopt resolution number 19.026. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 4, we have an appointment for Parks and Recreation Commissioner. And we would like, or I guess I would like to appoint Charlene Landry to the Parks and Recreation Commission. And I do have a little bit about Charlene. She's a teacher for Paramount Unified School District, former president of the Paramount Junior Softball League, and winner of the Paramount Elk Citizen of the Year Award. So congratulations and welcome to Charlene, if we have approval from the council.
So moved. No objection. Whatever suits you.
Been moved by Lemon, second by Hoffmeyer for this approval. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian. Councilmember Lemmons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Item number 4, fiscal year budget 2020 budget. We're doing these individually, I'm assuming, are we not? The A, B, C, D?
Yeah, I got a little spiel to kind of walk you through how we're going to handle this.
okay,
And then
go
if
ahead.
there's something that you have a question on the format, we can always go over that. So just as a recap, at the last meeting, we introduced to you the fiscal year 2020 budget. That introduction was kind of intended to give you an overall view of the budget. Our plan, as always, is to then have a more thorough discussion about the budget and seek your approval, which takes place today. Prior to that initial council meeting, though, on June 4th, I did send some correspondence to the council about portions of the budget. Additionally, we've received some questions from some of you individually that we've addressed. We've also attempted to have individual briefings with you to go over one of the more substantial components that you'll find of this year's budget, and that was pension reform. So, as you will hear from Karina in a minute, putting together a budget every year requires a lot of time, effort, and energy. This year's budget was absolutely no different. It was, in fact, this was one of the more complicated budget seasons that we've endured and throughout a number of years. Mostly this was due to the increase in expenses and flat revenue predictions that we have. So in regards to how the presentations will go today, we'll start off with Karina, who will give you an overview of the budget once again. Then we'll have each department head go over their scope of responsibility within the budget. Very much detail, a lot of detail will be provided as much as possible, but please stop us as we go along. Ask questions, and we'll be happy to provide clarification to the best of our abilities. Now, since this is expected to be a fairly long presentation, we have programmed in a break, as we usually do for the council, about a third of the way through. If the council wants to keep going and not take the break at that time, that's totally fine. If the council wants to take a break later in the presentation, we can do just that. We're prepared to go either way. So once the presentations are finished, all the questions are answered, and we'll be asking for your approval on the spending plan tonight. So there are 4 resolutions that will need your approval that are directly related to the budget. Additionally, there's an item that consists of the annual public safety agreements that we're also seeking your approval of. And this will also require a separate motion approval. So that's the format for tonight. So we'll go ahead and kick it off then. If there's no questions about the format, we'll go right into the presentations. And I'll now turn it over to our Finance Director, Karina Lamb, to start us off. Karina.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. We are very pleased to present to you fiscal year 2020's budget in greater detail tonight. We'll begin with some background information and financial data, and then each department head, like John said, will present their own budget to you in greater detail. It is our goal to adopt the budget tonight, so we have appropriation ready for the next fiscal year, which begins in July. For those of you who are in the audience tonight, if you would like to have hard copies of the budget, we have it available to you. You just need to raise your hand, and our staff here will bring it to you. We also have the budget document posted. We also have the budget document posted on our city website, on the homepage, on the very first page. You can access it on your phone or any computer devices. With that said, we'll start with some budget background information. Since the recession, local economy is stagnant. On the expenditure side, we have seen expenditures continue to outpace revenues in the past many years in benefits, and here is a breakdown. Approximately $165,000 increase in full-time salaries, $293,000 increase in part-time salaries, about $350,000 increase in pension costs, about $100,000 increase in workers' compensation. Lastly, about $145,000 increase in other benefits, which includes health insurance, life insurance, and disability insurance. With that said, we continue to provide similar level of service in fiscal year 2020 while proposing a balanced budget using reserves that we have saved up over the years. The conservative platform we have always maintained really have paid off as we now have the resources to use it when we need it. Dedicated funds include $680,000 in capital improvement project reserve for capital projects, $132,000 in equipment replacement fund for equipment purposes, and $210,000 from pension reserve to pay for pension costs. Again, we knew many years ago expenditures would continue to increase, so when we had a surplus, we put money aside. Now, this is just a budget forecast. When we close our books at the end of the fiscal year, if indeed we need to use the pension reserve, this is the first time we're using it. This dedicated reserve had a balance of over $1.3 million. It was intended to smooth out pension costs when we first set it up many years ago. The budget process is quite involved. It actually begins in March every year. Expenditures are requested and submitted by departments. Revenues are prepared by finance department. Both expenditures and revenues are forecast. Our practice during the budget process is also to review operation efficiency and possible restructuring if necessary. Once the initial data is ready, a series of reviews are conducted by the city manager and staff prior to May, followed by presentations to the council in June. The budget process does not stop here. We continue to fine-tune the numbers at mid-year and final. As we know more of the current year's data, we adjust the estimates. Now, it is very important to review the budget estimates we disclose in our annual financial reports. I'm very proud to say that our revenue numbers have very good track records. In the last 2 fiscal years, our estimates were as close as 0.7% to the actuals. Next, we'll start with revenues. In fiscal year 2020, despite a slight drop in the general fund revenues, when all city revenue sources combined, including the general fund, the water department, and restricted funds, total city revenues at about $48 million in fiscal year 2020, approximately $3.5 million increase. The increase is all related to restricted funds. Now, this is the same chart as the previous one. The only difference is we're adding general fund component in blue. As you can see, when comparing current year to next year, we're budgeting close to $27 million in the general fund. I will explain the decrease in general fund in the next slide. On the restricted fund category, we budgeted about $21 million in 2020, about $3.5 million increase when comparing next year to the current year. What made up the $3.5 million are from various grants, including increases in CDBG funds, gas tax, transportation funds, street resurfacing funds such as STPL, which is the State Transportation Program Fund. Also, in next fiscal year, we are programming some new funding sources in Measure W for stormwater compliance and SCAG and SB2 grants that will be used for specific plans in the Community Development Department. I do want to point out there is about $6.7 million source that's not included in the revenue here. It's because that's a loan we obtained from the iBank for the construction of the new well, and because it's not a revenue, it's not reflected here. However, when you see the large expenditure, please do note that we do have a source for that expenditure. Earlier, we inserted general fund into the overall revenues. Here we added sales tax in the general fund in brown or orange here. Overall, sales tax will be at $7.9 million next year, and the overall general fund is projected at $26.9 million. As you can see, sales tax makes up about 30% of a total unrestricted fund or the general fund. We are budgeting about $200,000 decrease in the general fund. The bulk of the decrease is in sales tax. In the current year, fiscal year 19, we have received some one-time sales tax that we know we're not going to receive in fiscal year 20, and that explains the drop next year. The blue bar represents the non-sales tax portion of the general fund revenues, which includes motor vehicle license fees, property tax, permits, licenses, etc. We are budgeting motor vehicle license fees to be stagnant next year as new car sales is slowing down after a few years of record sales. Here's a history of sales tax. Our assumption for next year is that fuel prices and retail establishments will remain about the same in fiscal year 2020. Sales tax estimate for next year is about $8 million. When sales tax is maintaining a good level right now, if we just do a comparison, we are now finally exceeding the pre-recession level in fiscal year 2008. Once again, the $2,000 decrease in fiscal year 20 is reflecting some one-time sales tax that we receive in the current year that we won't get next year. Sales tax data is confidential by law. Here's a chart that shows you the percent of total from various categories in the first quarter of 2019. We work very closely with our consultant to get the up-to-date information. They have access to the data directly at the state level, should we have any concerns or should an audit is needed. Once again, this chart shows you in general where we get the sales tax. In the cities our size and population, we heavily rely on fuels, gas station, and also on building and lumber materials. The analysis shows that in many categories, we have a leakage, such as in areas of restaurants, general consumer goods, foods and drugs, home furnishing, office supplies, etc. The various leakages prove that our residents do not shop in Paramount. That means sales tax is not being kept locally. Hence, we're not capturing the maximum buying power of our residents and not able to capture that for the city. As part of the budget review, we'll also look at utility users tax as a follow-up to Measure P. Since Measure P was passed in 2015, we've been seeing higher amount of utility users tax in fiscal year 16. At the same time, we've been experiencing refund or exemption requests, so you see a decrease since 2016. For fiscal year 2020, we are budgeting about the same at $3.5 million. Utility users tax is a significant source of income to continue paying for essential services. Utility users tax also helps after we lost $5 to $6 million a year in redevelopment agency revenues. It also helps balance the volatility of sales tax when we heavily rely on fuels. As for fees, the only proposed fee increase is business license fees. As the consumer price index was posted at 2.5% this past year, we're proposing a 2.5% increase in fiscal year 2020. Next, we'll cover expenditures. The orange bars here represent our operation, and the blue represents capital improvements. In our operations, as you can see here, when comparing current year to next year, there's a $2 million increase in expenditures. The increase includes all operational cost increase, such as contract rate increases from the Sheriff's Department, street sweeping, road maintenance, animal control, and crossing guard, etc. About $1.1 million also included is for salaries and benefits and a proposed cost of living adjustment for full-time employees. Included in the operation budget is also development of 2 specific plan documents for about $650,000 and $500,000 Measure W funding for storm water compliance. Again, these 2 big ticket items are all grant funded. Each department head will give you more information as they present the budget to you. As for capital improvements, we're budgeting over $13 million. About $6.6 million is related to the construction of a new water well. Also, there are a number of street improvement projects in next year's budget, also park and facility improvements. This chart shows you how our operating departments are being distributed with $35 million total in expenditures. Among our operating department, you can see that we're allocating 35% of resources to public safety, which is our #1 priority. Next is capital improvement projects. As always, we have ambitious CIP program, which is our capital improvement projects. We're budgeting close to $14 million in fiscal year 2020. Of that, $6.7 million for water, $6.3 million for streets, $430,000 for parks, and about $260,000 for miscellaneous projects such as the neighborhood improvement projects. The bulk of the $6.7 million is, in water is really related to the construction of the new well. As for streets, a number of projects were funded by transportation grants. And for parks, we have applied for a number of grants from the state and county. If successful, we will amend our budget at mid-year time, and we will keep you posted. More detail will follow later on when Adriana Figueroa, our Public Works Director's turn to present her budget. Next, we have David Johnson, our Community Service and Recreation Department. He'll walk through community promotion and recreation's budgets.
Thank you, Karina, Mayor and council members. So this budget for community promotion and organization funding begins on page 35 of your budget. This is the department division that supports groups that provide support services in our community and provides for community events and other services. So there's about $362,000 budgeted in this division to support its programming. You'll see there are 6 major events in this department. Let me go through them really briefly. The Eco-Friendly will be hosting our 3rd event in 2020. We do it near Earth Day. The Heritage Festival, 2020 sees us holding our 4th annual Heritage Festival. It'll be our 2nd year in the downtown, which worked out very well this year. And hopefully we'll be able to partner again with the parade committee that put together a really awesome parade. Our Senior Thanksgiving, this is our 39th year apparently of doing the Senior Thanksgiving event, so this has been going on for quite some time. Our Veteran Celebration will be going into our 2nd year of holding that event. That is, this year we're going to plan on doing it, it's a military ball style, different how we did it last year. The Holiday Tree Lighting Event, we're going into our 21st year of conducting that event. That is a kind of an envy of all the cities around us. We put on quite a show for our tree lighting to kick off the holiday season. And then our Santa Train, we just went through our Hallmark 50th year anniversary of running that train. So consider this year 1 of working our way towards the 75th anniversary of running the train. And what we have in this budget also is a new recognition program. We are recommending we have various things where we recognize the students that are really academic, but we'd like to also recognize our student athletes. So coming from our high school or the surrounding schools that have Paramount kids, we're going to work up a program very similar to how the city of Lakewood does it, where we're going to have a kind of a dinner to recognize those students, and then find a store in town that will display those students each year as we identify them. We're also looking at doing a Pillars of the Community. Again, similar to how Lakewood does, these are people that were supportive in the development and improvement of our community. So what we have in the budget right now for community promotion, they're really just kind of placeholders. We're still working through the costs of what this is going to look like, and we're reporting back to the council when we get more details. So right now, we just have placeholders in for those 2 items. So our in this budget, we have existing programming that will continue. It's our recognition programs that you're aware of for education. We have our advertising in this budget, our pitch and Paramount. We'll go in more details when we get to some slides further down. We have 14 groups in this department that are funded under our community organizations, and then we have 3 youth sport leagues that receive funding as well. Just to review, these funding mechanisms, we have 3. The first one is the Youth League formula. So these 3 organizations receive funding per eligible child, which is for us is a Paramount resident or PUSD student. And they get $55 per child to support their programs. The other is the community funding matrix. This is where most of the groups fall under. We have a matrix that we check off based upon how they conduct their business. For the most part, all of them have maxed out on the matrix, and they're receiving approximately $5,000. And these are the groups also under that matrix. And then we actually have 4 groups that are under our special event funding category. They obviously conduct some kind of community event, and we support them in conducting those events for our city. And this one's a little hard to see. In that top line, that's our Youth League funding, and that's the showing the actuals, the final FY19 and proposed 2020 budgets. For our youth leagues, what we do each year is we fund or we budget for the maximum amount they can receive. The youth leagues are eligible to receive $10,000 maximum per year. If you look at the FY19 final, because we did receive some of the rosters a bit late, we haven't taken them to the Parks and Rec Commission yet. to get their funding approved. So we still have it as the maximum amount. You'll see the actuals on that one probably go down because they are not sure, most of them, actually 2 of them probably won't hit the max. And then regarding the YMCA, you'll see a actual for FY18. That budget was moved into the Recreation Department, so when we get to that, my department will go over what the YMCA does for us. For the community groups, you see, we have a very well-balanced set of groups that get city funds, and they supplement services in our city for programs that we do not provide. And let's go over them really quick. You have California Aquatic Therapy. Obviously, that's aquatic therapy, but they provide that for persons with disabilities from our community. The Children's Clinic provides health care for low-income youth and families from our community. Children's Dental Health Clinic is dental treatment for kids that lack access to that care. Community Family Guidance Center deals with mental health issues for high-risk kids and families. Our Friends of the Library conducts an open house event for the library. The Helpline Youth Counseling folks, they do counseling for kids and parents to improve their life skills. Little House provides residential care and education for women with substance abuse issues. And Pathways Hospice provides grief and bereavement support along with hospice services. St. Francis, you see on there, no longer is receiving funding from the city. They actually went from a nonprofit to a for-profit agency, which we do not support. We support the nonprofits. That's why you see that budget going away. Sukasa has received funding for quite a while, but this is their first year that they'll be operating under our funding matrix. So that's why you see them jumping up to $5,000. That's what they qualified for under the matrix, and they provide services to combat domestic violence. Our Topeka Sister City provide 2 major events at Paramount Park, and they're receiving funding for that. It's the Day of the Child and the Day of the Dead. The 999 kids, the sheriffs receive funds to support kids in our Department of Family Child Services for these kids that have suffered abuse. And our student art show, as you all know, Traditional Artists Guild has actually gone away. We are working with nonprofits to bring an art show back. Where'd he go? So we kept that budget in there because, again, we hope to have somebody, another nonprofit, step forward and help us run that art show. So that's why that budget still remains. And this is the other items that fell out our community promotion budget. You see an uptick in the budget for plaques. We typically buy the old wood plaques that we used to get. We would, every couple, 3 years, have to buy a stock of those, and then we'd send them out to get imprinted for whatever events were coming up. As you know from last meeting, we actually switched away from the wood and we're going to a glass one. Those will be purchased as is, as we need them. So you'll probably see that budget go ahead and drop down a little bit because when we did the budget, we were still working with the wood plaques. Senior Thanksgiving, that budget will vary. It's all really dependent upon how many donations we receive. So FY19 was a really good year for donations, and that's the max. That's the final amount that we end up spending minus our donations. But we will budget, approximately the full amount we would anticipate for a normal year of funding, which is about $5,000. Our Christmas decorations, these are the ones you see around town, particularly in the Civic Center and around City Hall and the pond. Some of them are worn, some of them are broken, so we have a budget here to replace those. We also have some light displays around the Civic Center that we're switching out to LED energy efficient lighting. The Santa train budget, you'll see it drops from last year because that obviously reflected our 50th anniversary promotion of the train. The FY 2020 budget will include $5,000 to upgrade the sound system on the train and minor increases across the board for the variety of supplies and equipment that we need to purchase to operate the train. The bulk of the funding under city publications is for the Around Town, which used to be a quarterly mailed newsletter to our community in FY19. That now in FY 2020 is a monthly mailed newsletter completely. So this is another way that we are able to communicate with our residents and keep them informed. Our Pitch and Paramount program remains as a quarterly program to enhance areas in the city that are in need of repair, and which uses hundreds of community volunteers to assist in that effort. The community promotion events that you see there, community promotion events, that $117,600, that includes those 6 major events that we spoke of previously. It also includes the recognition programs that you're aware of for our top students, and also includes the new proposed Hall of Fame and Pillars of the Community. That concludes my presentation regarding community promotion and organizations. And just as John mentioned, this is typically where we might take a break if you so desire. It's at the mayor's discretion. But again, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about community promotion.
We want to continue here?
I'd like a break if you don't mind. I need a break. I don't need much of a break, but I need a break.
10-minute break?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
We'll take a 10-minute break then, and then we'll come back with questions. How about that?
That's fine.
Okay. As soon as we get everybody back in here, we'll reconvene.
Yeah, I don't know if she sits there right away, but I don't know. They're gonna appoint her. It's not.
There's our city manager out.
All right, it's your moment to.
Where'd you go? Oh, okay.
Candy.
Yeah. Okay, we'll reconvene this meeting now at this point. After your break. We're going to community service. You just did that.
Yeah.
He did
You have
community
questions.
promotion.
We got questions.
Yeah, we
Any
were on questions for community promotion.
Questions at
And
this
then
point.
we'll go into recreation.
Questions? No? None?
Hey, on the Thanksgiving dinner, so you budgeted $5,000, but last year you received about 3,500. Is that true, or 3,200?
No, actually, we probably spent around $7,000. I'm looking at Magda Garcia, and we received around 5,500, I believe. Is that about right?
Was that what? Okay.
Are you offering a donation?
Yeah. Well, I get enough for everything else.
Any further questions?
I'm not gonna say no more.
Yeah, it's just talking. Okay, we'll move along then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. So it's now my pleasure to introduce you to the Community Services and Recreation budget. This budget begins on page 93 of your budget document. So I'm gonna, on this slide, we're gonna kind of walk through, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about recreation. So recreation's entire budget is a little over $5 million, but half of that of our department budget consists of the STAR after-school program that's funded by nearly a $2 million ACES state grant, and our transit program that is funded through Proposition A transit funds. Overall, when you compare our department to last fiscal year, the Recreation Department has a reduction of about $320,000. This is due in no small part to our ongoing efforts to form partnerships. As the lieutenant spoke about, relationships are important. We have formed relationships with some of the outside agencies that are helping us navigate our way through to make sure we continue to provide the same kind of services that we can to our community, to try to expand those services and do it in the most cost-effective way that we can. We've been able to achieve significant savings by partnering with Long Beach Transit and Fiesta Taxi to develop our new Paramount in Motion transit program. Under the old transit program we operated, it was becoming increasingly apparent that our expenditures were outstripping our Proposition A transit revenues. Under our new Paramount in Motion program, we've been able to expand fixed route services in town using Long Beach Transit program, greatly expanded our point-to-point services with Fiesta Taxi for our vulnerable populations of seniors and disabled folks. We've expanded our transit opportunities for our college-bound student population. And in doing this, we've also reduced the overall expenditures of our Proposition A transit funds. This will allow opportunities for using those additional Prop A funds for other needs that the city has.
David, how much do you expect to save on your transit?
Your mic's not on.
How much do you plan on saving on your transit funds doing it this way?
I think we're currently looking, and Karina can answer that better, but I think we're about 400,000 plus.
And while she's looking that up, Mr. Vice Mayor and Council, and answer your question too, as I mentioned, one of the reasons why we did this was to avoid going into the general fund because our expenses on the transit program were pretty significant. We were teetering on having to go into the general fund. We were using excess Prop A transit funds just to make ends meet. But eventually we would have gotten, possibly this year, where we would have had to take some out of the general fund just to keep the buses going, so.
And all the buses
citizens
were.
in Paramount are just as happy as they ever were?
Yes, I mean, especially, if you're a college kid,
Yeah.
it's a deal to get on that, to
Yeah.
get that pup pass. And again, so as summer now hits and the kids are out of school, that pup pass is still active. And they can explore our Southland by getting on a Metro or Long Beach Transit bus.
Good.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say, expanded the services. And I know for me, I believe their buses are already in use here, right? Because I haven't pulled up behind any of those buses spewing that black smoke forever.
Right.
So they're all,
Yeah, so Long Beach Transit operates a lot of clean energy buses. Fiesta Taxi has some of its fleet which is using hybrid vehicles. So yeah, especially on the buses, Long Beach Transit is a much better provider when it comes to clean fuel vehicles.
are all of ours supposed to be the hybrids, or can they switch them out, or?
Talking about the buses or the Fiesta
buses.
Taxi?
I'm sorry, what?
No, the Long Beach Transit or Fiesta Taxi?
The Long Beach Transit.
There's no requirement that we have in the contract that they be fuel efficient. That is just we saw that's where Long Beach Transit was headed.
We don't know how much of their fleet is the other way right now.
I don't know their overall fleet, but I think the majority of buses in Paramount are the clean energy hybrid buses.
I know that that's what I've seen, but I would like to see that continue and, if possible, be part of our agreement with them. That's the direction that we're moving. Like to keep it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we can get that information too as well from Long Beach Transit. So
Did we have an agreement with them that they had to have clean air buses in Paramount?
No, we do have an agreement, but it doesn't specify that. Again, it was, we already saw that that's their intention of moving that direction, but we didn't specify it in the contract, but we certainly can go back and make an adjustment to that.
Okay.
So continuing on, our partnership with the
I'm sorry to interrupt, but were you able to find out the dollar amount?
So I was right, kind of right. About $450,000 was saved moving over to the Paramount in Motion, and so that's money that our Public Works Director will look at and find ways to spend appropriately.
Thank you, David.
Sure. So our partnership with the YMCA is also an important part of working with a respected national nonprofit that through its own administrative structure and funding has allowed us to shift the operation of an entire recreation division, our aquatics division, under their umbrella, as well as maintain a youth basketball program in town, an after-school program they operate at the Mariposa Center that's a supplement to our STAR after-school program. We also, in our budget, recreation budget, we're freezing a full-time recreation specialist position in facilities. This will assist us in the overall balancing of our city budget. And finally, there's some minor savings in our GRIP program for reasons that I will discuss later in this presentation. So moving on to existing programs. As you saw that there were 6 major special events in the community promotion budget, you also see special events budgeted in the recreation budget, and those are the items listed there. The photos with the Easter Bunny, which was added in last year. Our summer concerts, which is we've now moved to Progress Park for, I think we're going to our 3rd year, is going very strong there. Our Halloween festival, which is, again, huge, 6,000 people probably come to that. A haunted house, which has been generating some revenue for our PEP scholarship program. Our Photos with Santa program also generates revenue for our PEP scholarship program. And then we end the holiday season in a very exhausted way with our Breakfast with Santa event. But we have fun doing it. And then, so all these events you saw in community promotion that you see in the recreation budget, these are all supervised and staffed by recreation full-time staff and part-time staff. We've added a new event this year, and so far it's going really well. We have one July 5th. If you haven't been out to a Friday night market, please come on out. It is July 5th. It starts at 5 o'clock and goes to 9 o'clock right outside here on Jackson Street. That's going really well. We have also a weekly farmers market at Progress Park still. And our department also supports the various nonprofits in town, like Tepeque, Friends of the Library. We assist them with their special events. We'll be reporting on Latina Arts is also going to be doing a community event. We'll be assisting them as well. And then other events in the city, anything that comes up, if there's a need from Relay for Life for equipment and supplies, it's recreation staff that will assist them with that. Assemblyman Rendon has events here once in a while. We'll assist them with that. So that's kind of what we're kind of a Gumby department. We kind of bend and go as needed. Whoops. And then we also have, we're continuing our existing summer programs, which are very successful. Right now we have kicked off our recreation swim and swim lesson program with the YMCA. This also, in addition to recreation swim, we still have our own splash pad, which is open for the summer, and that's not staffed by the YMCA. That does not require a lifeguard, so that's city staff operating that. We have our summer nutrition activity program, so this is also a partnership that the department works with. We work with Paramount Unified School District to run this program, at all the school sites except for Jackson, because it's next to Gaines. All these school sites operate for the summer. If your child doesn't have anything to do, if they're hungry, they can come over to any of these sites, grab breakfast and lunch, and in between there, we provide recreation activities for the kids to do. We also use our gym. We open it up during the summer to have folks come in Monday through Thursday to play basketball. It's also open on Saturday. We've always allowed basketball, but now we're going to split the gym. We've got folks that want to play volleyball, so we'll allow basketball and volleyball in our gym for the summer. Our courts, now that kids are out of school, we open up the futsal courts completely, and the kids have access to 8 o'clock in the morning till it gets dark. And then day camp, our summer program at day camp is sold out. We have probably a little over about 100 kids each week, and we operate that for 8 weeks. And like I said, it's already sold out. And continue with our existing programming, we do run sports. The YMCA is running a basketball program, and we brought in last year Friday Night Lights, which runs a really awesome flag football program. We also have adult sports for we call it a Paramount Cup that the city operates. You see on the left side and the right side, those are the group on the left side are the adults that won our futsal tournament, and the folks on the right side are the adults that won our flag football tournament. Our department, the recreation department, operates all the facilities in the Paramount that are open for public use. We have our Mommy and Me instruction program, which is a free, basically it's the Gymboree program we operate over at Mariposa. We run the PEP Learning Center, so it's our homework center at Spanny Park. We run, which is the biggest program for us in our department, is our Start After School program. That's, again, a $2 million grant we use from the state to run that program. We have the largest senior program in the area. HSA is the provider of the food for that program. We are their largest site. We average probably about 130 seniors a day. When we run a special event at our senior center, we always sell out, and we have folks on the waiting list, but we service about 230, 240 seniors for our special events each time we run one. We are going, believe it or not, into our 4th year of the Youth Commission. It is really fun working with those kids. They got a lot of energy. We also allow instructional classes to operate at our facilities, so we work with private instructors that operate various classes of different types of things, and they provide a fee for that, and we let them use our space. And again, we mentioned in Paramount Emotion, we also are the supervisors for that transit program. And again, it is nice to see that we'll do what we can to make sure that our contract reflects that they must have clean burning fuel vehicles. GRIP. Regarding our GRIP, our Gang Resistance is Paramount program, the FY 2020 budget proposes ending this venerable program, begun in 1981 under the leadership of Tony Osos, you see there in the upper right corner. He is the founder of GRIP. So our city-district partnership was, well, how do I want to say this? We've worked with the city and the district have worked for a long time with this GRIP program. It was a very unique relationship, and it's done its job. We were once a gang-plagued city, and we have transformed ourselves into a much safer city that we all see today. The dramatic decline in this gang activity, as demonstrated by our crime statistics, and the lack of counseling we do regarding gang behavior in the schools, tells a story that we have made this transformation successfully. The needs of our students, however, has evolved to become more about bullying, cyberbullying, social media, suicide, unfortunately, recreational drug use. We have for several years now been looking to recreate the GRIP program into a program that would be more supportive of the current social and behavioral needs of our students. Luckily, through our partnership with the district and our ongoing communications with them through the ad hoc, we are proposing that Paramount Unified School District, with their agreement, and they have, take over the GRIP program and incorporate it into their current social wellness instruction that they do daily at their school sites. The district is ideally suited to provide for the needs of our students through their daily instruction. They provide a safe and civil program, so they provide instruction to students on how to be good citizens, on how to be civil to each other, and to not bully each other. And they do this at all grade levels. And they do this message consistently when they enter the Paramount Unified School System. They are now all receiving this message constantly. The teachers support it, the counselors support it, the administrators all speak the same language. They will incorporate now into this program anti-gang instruction. We don't want that to go away. So they'll keep that in their current program, and it'll be reinforced and supported by professional social workers the district will be placing at each school site. City recreation staff that have history and time with the GRIP program will be available to the district to assist them in this transition. We'll always be there to, if they need our involvement or support or make a presentation. Our sheriff deputies at the same time will also be able to do what they do with the GRIP program. They'll go to the schools and they'll make presentations, obviously with that same messaging that we have with GRIP. And so while it's bittersweet, we are actually excited to see that GRIP is going to move into its new phase with the school district beginning this fall, if you agree. And then I go into, these are our capital outlay projects that are our purchases that are in the recreation department. We have some park upgrades for $24,500. Of that, $17,300 is coming from dedicated funds and $7,200 is coming from non-restricted funds. So what we're looking at doing, you'll see this year after year, we're slowly converting over we have these expanded metal trash cans, these expanded metal hot coal containers, picnic tables. So we're slowly going to start transitioning parks over to these concrete trash cans, these concrete hot coal containers, and then in future budgets, you'll see more requests for concrete picnic tables. The dog waste signs and containers for the dog waste bags. This is contingent upon, as we bring, and we will be hopefully doing it soon, we'll be bringing to the city council some proposed park ordinances. One of those will be some limited access for dogs on a leash to be used at identified parks. And then wherever the council decides to allow, if at all, leash dogs on city parks, we would like to place dog waste stations at those parks. In terms of our facility upgrades, we have $38,700 funded or proposed, and these are all coming from dedicated funds. We're looking at some audio replacements at Progress Plaza Park, or Progress Park Plaza. At this facility, obviously, that's one of our prime facilities. We hold a lot of major events there. The district uses it for events. This is where we have the state of the city. And it's important that we make sure that audio system works well, so we have some planned replacements there to improve that system. At our community center, we, for our seniors, that's again, our community center is /senior center. So during the day, it's a senior center. We show them weekly movies. It's actually kind of difficult because of the lights, the windows in that building. So we like to tint some of those windows to make it easier to show movies. Once we do that, it's actually going to make it easier to show, if we want to have summer movies at the community center, we can do that because we'll be able to tint those windows. So we're hoping that happens and we can get that started. And then we have miscellaneous for $24,600. $2,600 is dedicated funds, $12,000 comes from restricted funds, and $10,000 from non-restricted funds. We have in there 2 portable generators. These are generators that are used at our special events, at Friday Night Market. You'll see the service clubs that have events like Tepique. They're constantly, when they have their community events at the park, they need generators. So this will assist us in helping run those events because everyone needs power. We're replacing our tarps at our gym. It's been about 10 years since we last replaced them. They're in need of repair. And then we need an electric utility vehicle in our facilities division. This is at Paramount Park where we have to obviously transport a lot of things back and forth. This vehicle will give them a vehicle with a little bed. It'll be an electric vehicle. This one will be paid for out of AQMD funds. And also a vehicle that we could use at special events. If you were at the Heritage event, that was a lot of walking. Staff would really appreciate have a vehicle to use at that event. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If there are none, then I can pass it over to our Public Safety Director, Adriana Lopez.
Questions before we go there? No, yes?
Is your mic on, Lori? I can't hear you.
John had turned it off on.
Oh, yes. During the break.
Farmers Market on Fridays. What's going on with that?
It's still running. So Veterans Farms is the agency that we're contracted with to run that market. They are, in my mind, they're struggling. They're trying to get it started. Obviously, there's the last market operator kind of left a bad taste in some of the vendors' mouths. So it's hard to get some of those vendors to come back. They're working on that. It's not to my level of happiness and satisfaction. I'd love to see it bigger, as would they. They're working on it. They're still committed to doing it, and they keep coming out every Friday, and we hope that it keeps growing.
Okay, so we do plan on keeping it?
Absolutely.
Okay, good, thanks. Everything else looks great.
Any further questions?
Our farmers markets, are they supposedly going to have produce strictly, or is it kind of like a mini swap meet? Is that what they turn out to be?
I wouldn't call it a mini swap meet. So they do have, you've always should see, and I have seen produce vendors.
Yeah.
So they, especially during the spring and summer months, that's much easier for them to get
I
produce
think I
vendors.
seen one last time.
But they will have hot food vendors, and they will have what we would call crafters. So that would be typical for our farmers market. Now, the Friday night market, you will not see usually produce vendors.
Right.
You're going to see the hot food vendors, crafters, things like that.
Very good, thank you.
No further questions? Okay. You're
Thank you,
on.
Dave. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I will be highlighting the budget for public safety, which starts on page 79 of your budget document. Public Safety Department consists of 5 divisions: administration, sworn, non-sworn, code enforcement, and support services. Public safety has the largest operating budget of any city department, with a proposed budget of approximately $12.5 million for fiscal year 2020. This is an increase of approximately $222,000 from fiscal year 2019. And I will discuss every division individually. The largest portion of public safety budget is dedicated to our sworn division. The total budget for this division is almost $8 million. This includes general fund and grant-funded services. I'll start with our general fund items, which include general law. This is what provides our daily deployment. We have 5 special assignment officers, also known as SAOs, and 1 special assignment officer sergeant. In addition to these dedicated items, we also have a robust overtime budget, which consists of general fund and grant funding. This budget allows the lieutenant to supplement deployment scheduling by assisting or assigning deputies to work special assignments. So for example, if we see that there's an increase in robbery, under the direction of the station lieutenant, a robbery suppression operation will take place during the hours this activity is occurring. In fiscal year 2020, we will see an increase of 5% to the deputy services, a 2.75 increase for sergeant services, and an additional 0.5% increase to the liability trust fund, for a total of 11% contribution. And although we're going to see a high increase in this in our sheriff's contract, the staffing level of our deployment will remain the same. We will not see any changes to our deployment. In addition to the dedicated items that we just discussed, the sworn division also includes funding for our contractual agreements for the school resource officer, our dedicated detective specialist, and our deputy district attorney. Last year, after we carefully looked at our contract, we reconfigured our traffic enforcement program. A dedicated traffic item was converted to dedicated traffic enforcement hours. By doing this, it allowed us to schedule our dedicated enforcement more effectively, and it also provided greater flexibility. We are now able to schedule traffic enforcement based on the needs and complaints of our community. So for example, if a resident reports concerns during a specific time frame, deputies will work that time frame, and enforcement is also target specific. In addition, multiple units can work traffic enforcement at the same time. This is why residents often see 2 or more motorcycle deputies patrolling the city at various times. Furthermore, we saw a reduction in cost. Lieutenant Barragan and now Sergeant Ayala, we both believe that the realignment of our traffic program is working well. And the photo that we've included in this slide was taken during a enforcement detail at Mott and Hunsaker, which is an area where we receive complaints from residents on a consistent basis. In huge part of the realignment of our traffic program, we have seen an overall decrease of 19% in traffic collisions. There was a decrease in every category, and the numbers under fiscal year 2019 are only from July 2018 to May of 2019, so it's not a complete fiscal year. And although we're proud of all these decreases, traffic continues to be a major concern to our Paramount residents. Therefore, traffic enforcement will continue to be a major part of our deployment. So to ensure that we did not reduce the number of deputies working in the city of Paramount, we reviewed every item in our public safety department. And in some cases, we were able to restructure existing contracts. By doing so, we were able to have a total cost reduction of $335,000. And I will highlight each item specifically. I will start with our SAGE program. And one of the most notable adjustments was with this contract. Through an agreement with the County of Los Angeles, the city contracts for a dedicated deputy district attorney assigned to the SAGE program, which stands for Strategies Against Gang Environments. The deputy district attorney, who presented last council meeting or 2 council meetings ago, serves as a liaison with the court officials and ensures that the court and prosecuting attorneys are aware of the city's positions regarding specific cases. The deputy district attorney assists the city with abating problematic properties, and as part of these duties, the deputy district attorney works with property owners to resolve issues and abate nuisances in the community. Due to the increases in the contracts, staff reached out to the city of Bellflower to negotiate a shared agreement in which the deputy district attorney will be responsible for the supplemental services to both municipalities. By sharing the cost, the total cost of $288,000 for this agreement, we will see a cost reduction of approximately $145,000. And even though we will be sharing the deputy district attorney, we believe that by prioritizing our projects, we will not see any significant impact in level of service. In our non-SOAR division, Public Safety evaluated the crossing guard services contract with All City Management, and we were able to secure an agreement with a cost reduction of slightly over $33,000. So the coverage will remain the same at each school site. The contract includes a total of 12,870 hours of dedicated crossing guard services at 19 school sites with 21 dedicated crossing guards. In years past, the standard industry was to pay for 4 hours for each crossing guard, regardless of how long they were physically at the location. So we determined that those standards are no longer the same and that other cities, such as City of Bellflower, have restructured their agreements to better optimize the hours of the crossing guard services. So the reduction in hours will not result in less coverage. It will result in a reduction of cost. And All City Management Services will continue to provide the same level of service. So let me explain that a little bit, because that was a lot to go over. So in past, the city would be billed for 4 hours for each day. So 180 days, we would get billed for 4 hours for each site. What we realize is that the crossing guard is actually not there for 4 hours. So a lot of the cities have negotiated the contract to reflect more of the time that they're actually at the site. So hopefully I've been able to explain that.
And just to add to that too, when we entered this agreement with All Cities Management years ago, what Adriana said, what she meant with the industry standard, that's what they required you to contract out for, was for a block of 4 hours for each guard at each intersection. The industry standard had changed. Other cities have renegotiated their contract to say, hey, wait a minute, the guard's only out here for 3 hours and you're billing me for 3.5 hours. So All City Management Services, Inc. has then responded to that and has allowed for that change in the contract.
Thank you, John. So let's move to our code enforcement division. This is the graph that we discussed at a previous city council meeting, and it reflects the reduction of our code enforcement cases. As you know, our code enforcement officers are there to ensure that properties throughout the city are maintained in conformance of applicable zoning, and also to maintain property maintenance codes in order to preserve the safe and attractive living in our city. After conducting an assessment of our newly launched code enforcement software program, which launched in 2018, we analyzed that all the current and active code enforcement cases and determined that the caseload of each code enforcement officer is now manageable at a slightly lower staffing level. What the software did, it allowed us for better tracking and monitoring of cases, which resulted in better time management for each code enforcement officer. Therefore, the Public Safety Department is proposing to freeze one vacant full-time code enforcement position and increase the hours of our part-time code enforcement officer. The code enforcement, or the frozen full-time code enforcement position, will be part of the restructuring of another department, which will be discussed later in the presentation. The Code Enforcement Division will consist of one code enforcement supervisor, 4 full-time code enforcement officers, 1 part-time code enforcement officer, and the vacant full-time code enforcement officer, which will be the part of the restructuring of another department. So Support Services Division. The Public Safety Support Division funds and supplies contractual services such as the Animal Control Services with the Southeast Animal Control Authority, SIACA, and our total budget for that is approximately $279,000 in fiscal year 2020. Due to the proposed increase of the dedicated SIACA officer, the city evaluated the dedicated position and determined that the activity provided by the officer is modest and comparable to the other neighboring cities that do not have a dedicated officer. At this time, we believe that the dedicated officer is not necessary anymore, and we are proposing to eliminate the position in fiscal year 2020, resulting in a reduction of slightly over $61,000. If the position is eliminated, the officer will be assigned to another service area, which may include the city of Paramount. We put this graph together to illustrate what we found in our study. The graph demonstrates that while the cost of the dedicated officer increase, the request for assistance from Paramount residents decrease. And you can see that in the red line, the cost would be the blue bars, and the red line would be the request for assistance from Paramount residents, and then the yellow line would be the observations made by the dedicated officer. So here it demonstrates what our study found, that we believe that the dedicated officer is no longer warranted. Our department will continue the same funding for life programs or quality of life programs such as the Neighborhood Preservationist, the Good Neighbor Program, and our Neighborhood Watch Program. This concludes my presentation, part of the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Nope.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Where are we going?
Next, will be, you have any questions for public safety?
No, there
before
were
we
no
begin?
questions.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, moving on. Next, we have general government divisions. I'll start with finance and municipal support, as you see on the screen. And Kevin later on, Kevin, our assistant city manager, will handle other divisions, including city manager and administrative services. So here is finance and municipal support, which begins on page 55 of your budget document. Total budget for the department in 2020, fiscal year 2020, is approximately $4 million. Of that, about $1.4 million belongs to administration, $150,000 belongs to customer service, $440,000 relates to water billing, and about $2 million in municipal support. In terms of changes in fiscal year 2020, the department has a total increase of $209,000 when comparing next fiscal year to the current year in 2019. Minor increases is in administration and customer service, approximately $6,500 increase in both divisions. In water billing, the increase about $30,000. In municipal support, it seems like there's a big jump to the tune of $186,000, and it is related to the general liability insurance, which I'll explain further. So what do we do in finance? We handle the accounting function. Annually, we issue about 7,500 accounts payable checks in-house. We issue about 8,000 payroll checks. Also in-house, we also do other functions in-house, including accounts receivable, treasury. In addition to all these day-to-day duties, we also handle the budgets, the annual financial report. We comply with all state reporting requirements and the audits. A division of finance is customer service. We serve our residents. We work with other departments and agencies on business licensing. We also issue ESL permits. We handle citywide mail. We are also responsible for processing and mailing out 45,000 water bills from the division annually. In addition to our routine day-to-day, we have audits, as I mentioned earlier. So in addition to that, I want to highlight that 3 years in a row, we've been engaged in an extra and voluntary audit, which is called agree upon procedure. Now, again, this is voluntary. It is not required by law. It is not required by the National Government Finance Officers Association. We voluntarily engage our independent auditors to look into our policies and procedures to further strengthen our internal control. So far, they have not made any findings in this special audit. This just shows you a proactive approach to safeguard our internal control. I want to give you another examples. We are also keeping posted of what's happening out there in various agencies. Recently, a few months ago, we learned of an audit that happened in the city of Long Beach, where it was posted on the press telegram. What happened is their audit finds that they have findings in various areas. We went through the list that their auditors recommended for the city of Long Beach to see if we are doing, we have the right procedures. And we find that there's one thing that perhaps we are deficient, which is having cameras directly on areas where our staff counting money. So with that, we actually install cameras in finance. We will continue to look for other areas other facilities perhaps that require cameras, and we will install that as well. So lastly, for the last 3 decades, the city has been getting the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officer Association Award for Excellent Finance Reporting. We do not take this lightly, and certainly we hope to continue this tradition going forward. As for municipal support, this is a division where we serve citywide equipment and services. That includes insurance, such as general liability insurance, property insurance, earthquake insurance, etc. This division also covers all telephones, utilities, IT technologies, software, and licenses. Now, I mentioned earlier there seems to be an increase in the general liability insurance premium. Here is an explanation. Total premium we are required to pay into the Joint Power Authority pool this year is about $530,000. This number is an initial deposit amount required in the beginning of the year. When comparing to the current year, the deposit is a $60,000 increase. In addition to that, in current year fiscal year 2019, we have gotten some good news. We'll be getting a refund of $122,000. So that further reduces what we pay currently. So when we compare current year to next year, looks like there's a jump of $186,000. But we're hoping in a few months we'll get the true-up dollar amount from JPA, which is our Joint Power Insurance Authority, and hopefully we can have a better number at that time to show you. But at this time, as conservative as we can be, we budget the highest dollar amount in the budget. Next, Kevin, our Assistant City Manager, will go through other general government divisions with you.
Unless there's any questions for finance.
Questions? No? Okay.
I got maybe just one. Your refund, what is that why are you getting the refund? How does it figure out? You know, I know when you do, in a business, you do it at the end of the year, you do their audit, they find out your sales and stuff like that, and you get money back or you pay more. How are you getting this 122,000 back?
Yeah, actually, Joint Power Authority contacted us and tell us that in the beginning, they charge us a deposit for estimate how much payout we need to do for the year. Toward the end of the year, they will have a true up. They would say, oh, based on what you pay, you actually don't need that much. So they refund us for 122,000.
Okay.
So we're hoping the same trend will happen next year as well. We just don't know at this time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Next are budget highlights from our City Manager's Office and Administrative Services Department. The City Manager's Office budget begins on page 43, and the Administrative Services Department on page 47. As you know, in March of next year, a consolidated statewide primary election will be conducted by the County of Los Angeles. During this same election, there will also be a general municipal election in which 3 city council seats will be open for voters to decide upon. The cost for this election will be about $79,000 and is included in the proposed budget. And just to be clear, the cost that was presented last week of $287,000 was for a special standalone election in November 2019, so that was for a different election. Staff will also be continuing its efforts to update the municipal code. A full revamping of the code book hasn't happened in decades, and it's anticipated that this process will be completed by the end of FY 2020. And the cost for hiring a consultant to assist the City Council through a vision, mission, values exercise will be $10,000. This effort is intended to help the City Council determine what its vision, mission, mission, and values are as a body, so it can then determine future goals and objectives for the city. This program is being carried forward from FY 2019 in the City Manager's Office budget, but will be in the City Council's budget for FY 2020. Moving on to Human Resources in the Administrative Services Department, which begins on page 52. As you'll recall, the classification and compensation study was completed earlier this year. In the mid-year budget for FY 2019, the city began implementing the recommendations from the study, including moving Phase 1 employees or those furthest below the labor market into Phase 2. Now, with the proposed FY 2020 budget, staff is recommending that Phase 2 employees are elevated into Phase 3, or to be about 10 to 15% within the market range. As we stated at the very outset of the class and comp study, the goal was to phase in adjustments over time to make our salaries and benefits more competitive with the labor market, depending on resources that are available to us. This is important as we recognize that our employees are our most valuable assets. As for our part-time employees, we've been adjusting their salaries to comply with the minimum wage law over the last few years. Therefore, several positions will be adjusted as well in FY 2020. The minimum wage will be $13 per hour beginning in January of 2020. Another proposal is to add holidays in the final full week of December 2019. As many employees take leave time in the days prior to and after the Christmas Eve and Christmas Day holidays, and because the end of the year is typically a very slow period for the city, we are proposing a one-time benefit of additional holidays on December 26th and 27th of this year. And finally, the FY 2020 budget also proposes pension contributions from our employees, as well as a 3% cost of living adjustment for full-time employees, and I will discuss this in more detail with the following slides. So as you will see, what we're proposing to do here with our employee pension program is not a revolutionary concept. In fact, we found that the city administers its pension program very differently as compared with most of our neighboring cities. This proposal is intended to bring us in line with the most common and responsible practices of our industry regarding pensions. So just for the council's knowledge, this same presentation that I'm about to present to you was also presented to our employees 2 weeks ago. Jonathan Massanat and Karina and I went out to our 4 different departments and made this presentation 4 different times. We did receive some feedback, not very much, from our employees. And during our meetings, we also offered to have additional meetings with employees as needed and answer questions as needed. Thus far, we haven't received that much. So before moving forward, I wanted to provide an overview and background on our pension program. First, with an overview, some significant issues include the fact that pension costs are growing and are unsustainable. And it's actually led to a budgetary deficit for us for this fiscal year coming up, 2020. And also there's increasing public scrutiny and pressure over public pensions. I'm sure most of you have seen news reports, TV news reports regarding the increasing cost of pensions and some outrage from the public, the fact that tax dollars have to be spent for increased pensions. So those are some of the major issues. Our goal with what we're going to be presenting is to address these issues while at the same time also taking care of our employees. So the proposal that we have within the budget is for employees to contribute 2% towards their pension cost, and for the city to provide a 3% cost of living adjustment. Regarding retirement plans, many public employees receive their retirement plans through the California Public Employees Retirement System, also known as CalPERS. And what CalPERS provides is what's known as a defined benefit program. In other words, a defined benefit program is a pension. It's a type of benefit that's given for the life of a retired employee, and that's what we offer to our employees here. But there's also other retirement plans. Some government agencies are non-CalPERS agencies. And just for a little background here, when I first started my career in local government with the city of Irvine, the city of Irvine actually was not a CalPERS agency. So what it provided was a defined contribution program, which is very similar to what's provided in the public sector through 401ks. And of course, that type of program is limited to the amount of money that's actually put into the 401k. Now with CalPERS, they provide a range of benefit factors, which are also known as pension formulas, that span from 2% at 55 all the way through 3% at 60. And so now what you see there in red is what's provided by the city. At 2.5% at 55 is what the city has contracted for its classic employees. And I'll go over and provide a more detailed explanation as to what a classic employee is. Also, the city provides a 2% at 62 formula for PEPRA employees, and that's something that's mandated to us by the state. And again, with PEPRA employees, I'll explain who they are a little bit further on. So just to provide a little bit of explanation regarding the formula numbers, where you see the percentages, the 2% or the 2.5%, what that represents is a credit for our employees for every year that they work for the city. So for example, if an employee worked for the city for 10 years under the 2% formula, after 10 years, they would receive a credit of 20%. For an employee that receives a 2.5% credit, After 10 years, they would have a 25% credit, and I'll go over how that's calculated a little bit later on as well. And then the other numbers, the 55 and the 62, those numbers represent the year of age in which that employee can retire and receive full benefits.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
So the 2.0 and the 2.5, because you mentioned some years, I thought it just had to do with whether or not they were a PEPRA or a Classic, not the number of years they worked.
Well, it's factored into the number of years that they work. So again, if you are an employee, a PEPRA employee that's worked here for 10 years, with the 2% formula, you would receive a credit of 20% for those 10 years. For the Classic employee at 2.5%, after 10 years, you would have a credit of 25%.
Right.
And again, I'll show you how that's calculated.
Okay.
So first, a little bit about the different type of employees that we have. The city's pension program is provided differently depending on when an employee was hired and became a CalPERS member. As a result, we have two different types of employees when it comes to pensions. First, with Classic employees, these are employees that were hired and became CalPERS members prior to 2013. And as Classic employees, they receive the city contracted amount or the city contracted formula of 2.5% at 55. Now, on the other hand, we also have what's known as PEPRA employees. PEPRA employees are part of what's called the Public Employees Pension Reform Act. As I mentioned, there has been a lot of attention given to pensions in California, a lot of controversy, and as a result, back in 2012, the state legislature approved this act, the PEPRA Act, which was in essence pension reform, which required that all PEPRA employees who were hired or became members of CalPERS after 2013, they be subject to a different formula. And that was a mandate by the state. It's nothing that we can change. It's nothing that we can pick and choose which employees are Classic or PEPRA. If an employee is hired as of January 1, 2013, they are automatically PEPRA employees, and they receive that 2% at 62 formula. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Sure.
So, Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I just interject instead of going back and forth to you for permission? So is the $21 million that we owe in pension funds, is that strictly Classic employees, or is PEPRA play a part in that at all?
I believe it is mainly with our Classic employees.
Okay.
For the amount of pension that we didn't have funds to pay for, as well as future liability. But would you like to add to that?
Yeah, a vast majority of them, out of the $21 million, only $3,000 related to PEPRA. The rest all belong to Classic, because the Classic employees' contributions in CalPERS has experienced a huge market loss a few years ago, also experienced recession, and that's what happened.
And Kevin's going to hit the unfunded liability in a minute here, too. So he'll go over how much that is
Yeah,
and what
so
it's
what
about.
you're referring to.
I'm trying to be patient, but I don't want to forget.
I'm sorry, I'm getting there. But that large
Okay.
number, it's what's known as the unfunded pension liability, and
Okay.
that's where a lot of the public concern is centered around.
Right, and I'm familiar with that. I just didn't know if PEPRA contributed to that at all.
Yes.
So basically,
How much
that's
is our liability as of right now? 2.9? That we owe PERS?
It's 21 million.
The total
21
unfunded
million,
liability,
yeah.
yeah, it's about 21 million.
And we pay back 900,000, right?
Yes, not only we continue to pay the annual obligation, we also pay down extra when we could last year, so about 880,000 last year.
And Councilmember Hoffmeyer, just to provide a little bit of context regarding our unfunded pension liability, 21 million. Very large number. It's something that, we're concerned about and we're trying to manage. But just for context, as a contract city, the fact that we don't have our own police and fire, which is a tremendous, expense to have, our unfunded pension liability is quite a bit less as compared to a full-service city.
So a city like Downey and stuff like that,
Right.
there's
way
sky
high.
high.
Correct.
Sky high compared to
Correct.
that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. So, so how does this work for our employees? So using the example of a classic employee that we'll call Bill. Bill, as a classic employee, is under the 2.5% at 55 pension formula, okay? Let's just say Bill is 55 years old and has 25 years of service with the city. Bill's final compensation when he retires is $50,000. So if you take the 2.5% from the formula, you multiply that by the number of years of service with the city, you get 62.5%. You take the 62.5% and you multiply that by his final year compensation, $50,000, and you get $31,300 in annual retirement. So upon retirement at 55 years old, Bill will receive $31,300 a year in pension
For the rest of his
for
life.
the rest of his life, plus some cost of living adjustments over time. So that's what a classic employee would receive.
And the people that are in Pepper, they'll get the money until it runs out.
Well, no, I'll show that to you next.
Okay.
So here, the same example with the Pepper employee. Again, the Pepper employee has the formula of 2% at 62.
Right.
Sally is our Pepper employee. Sally is 62 years old. She has the same number of years of service as Bill. Her final year compensation is calculated a little bit differently. It's a 3-year average because of the Pepper rules. But let's say for this example, her final year compensation is $50,000. So using the 2% from the pension formula multiplied by the 25 years of city service, you get 50%. 50% multiplied by $50,000, and you get $25,000 in annual retirement for Sally as a Pepper employee. But I want to point out to you the differences between the Pepper employee and the classic employee. And again, this is the situation that we currently have in our city. Of our 92 full-time employees, about 20 of them are Pepper employees. So going back, the classic employee, Bill, gets to retire at 55 years old, whereas Sally can only retire at 62. Sally's pension formula is 2% at 62, while Bill's is 2.5%. And you see the difference in the annual retirement that they receive upon retirement. Bill will be making more than $6,000 more than Sally at retirement. Okay? So again, that's just to point out the differences with the two different formulas that our employees receive.
I have a question. So the 2.5, the enhanced formula, if I understood right in a presentation that I saw on this, there was a chart of percentages that the city could choose from, and they chose a 2.5 enhanced program. The 2.0 is part of what the state dictates it has to be now?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a very good point, and I did not mention that, and I apologize for that. So again, going back to this slide, the 2.5% at 55 for our classic employees, this is something that the city contracted for, I want to say about 15 years ago or so, roughly. This is what's known as an enhanced benefit formula. The typical benefit formula that I would say most cities use, and just to digress a little bit more, 3 cities where I've worked at previously, where I spent the bulk of my career, has always been 2% at 55. So the fact that the city of Paramount provides the 2.5% is a tremendous benefit for our city employees.
Was it the reason you came?
Paramount's a great city, and I wanted to be here. Okay, so moving forward. So again, that's the difference between the classic employee and Pepper employee here within our workforce. So now, how does the city pay for its pension program? Again, starting with our classic employees, normal cost. It's divided into the employee portion and the employer portion. Now, the employee portion is intended to be paid for by the employees. That's 8% of their payroll. Again, it's the employee portion, so that's how that was set up. It was supposed to be paid for by the employees. However, here, with the city of Paramount, again, as a tremendous benefit to employees, all these years, the city has paid the employees' share of the pension cost. Now, regarding the employer's portion of the pension cost, of course, the city pays for that, and that's a pretty large percentage there. You see the 42.85%, which includes the 11.75% normal cost. That's just the cost moving forward. The 31.1% catch-up, that's the unfunded pension liability cost.
The 21 million.
Right. So, again, the cost is supposed to be split in these two ways. However, for classic employees, as you see there at the bottom, the city pays the full cost. Currently, classic employees pay zero for their pension benefit. Now, again, this is in contrast to our Pepper employees. Again, the same setup where there is the employee portion as well as the employer portion. Now, these numbers are a little bit different based on actuarial calculations because these employees are Pepper employees, these 20 employees that we have. They pay about half of their pension costs, whereas the city pays the other half. And the way the Pepper employees' pension works, it's very similar to how Social Security works in the private sector, where the employees are expected to pay their own share. Now, how this works for employees, for Classic and Pepper employees that are currently working. So again, looking at Bill, Bill makes $50,000, and you see the zero there. That's the cost for Bill for his pension costs. And we're just going to say, for example purposes, that Bill pays 10% in taxes. With this calculation, with this simple calculation, Bill would take home about $45,000. Now, it's different for Sally because she makes the same amount of money, does the same amount of work, same job, but she has to pay, as a Pepper employee, she has to pay the 7% in pension costs, plus her usual 10% in taxes, and as a result, she takes home just under $4,000 less than Bill as a Pepper employee. Okay, but again, that's because of the 0 and the 7 there that you see. Okay, so again, touching on some of the items that I mentioned earlier, our pension costs are very high. It's putting a strain on our budget. For fiscal year 2020, our costs for current and retired employees' pension costs is just under $3 million. But what's more concerning is the next part in that bullet point. Our costs are going up year over year from FY 2019 to FY 2020 by $359,000. We hardly have revenues that are increasing by that amount. So that is just a very, very concerning trend if that continues. Again, this is something that's highly scrutinized by the public. Most cities out there, as I mentioned at the very beginning, require their employees to contribute to the employee portion. And again, we, as a very generous benefit to our employees, we do not require that our Classic employees contribute towards even the employee portion. So as I will show, our costs have doubled over time. This is simply just not sustainable from a financial perspective. And times are changing, and we need to try to change along with it.
Hey, Kevin, before you go on, in response to a comment that was made earlier, a question, that third bullet there that Kevin said total salary bands, 38% of the city's operating budget, there was a question about a full-service city and how much they pay and how expensive that is. Their pension costs are closer to like 70% of the operating budget if you have police and fire. In fact, talking to another city manager from a neighboring full-service city, he told me that once you reach that 74 to 75%, you're looking at a bankruptcy. That's when you know things are bad. That's what happened to Vallejo, Stockton, San Bernardino, those cities that had to file for bankruptcy, but this was the major cause of it. But anything, so just to put things in perspective, we aren't as bad off as those that have the full a service city.
So this is the trend I was talking about that we're very, very concerned about. Clearly, there's an upward trend here with our city pension costs, as you can see, from fiscal year 2013 to the upcoming fiscal year 2020. Pension costs have doubled from 1.5 million to about $3 million. We don't know where this is going to go, but obviously the trend is very concerning. And this is a comparison of cities. This information we received originally from our class and comp study that we just finished off. Since then, we wanted to make sure that these numbers were correct, so we dug a little deeper, checked in with these cities to make sure that these were still correct. So this is a little bit different from the presentation that we gave to our city employees. The only one difference is with the city of Hawaiian Gardens. They are like us. They have deep pockets with their casino, and they're able to provide their employees with the benefit of paying for the employee's share. So, but if you look at these cities, our neighboring cities, the majority of them have their employees pay the full employee portion, which is in their case 7 to 8%. Now, there are cities like the city of La Mirada and Lakewood who are a little bit later to the game, sort of like we are. They are just now beginning to have their employees, their classic employees, pay 2%. So again, they as well are looking at an incremental approach to paying the employee portion. Again, the total employee portion is about 7 or 8%. They're starting with 2%. That's what our proposal is as well, to start with 2%. Okay, so our proposal in FY 2020, starting with classic employees, we are proposing to have these employees contribute 2% again of the employee portion of the 8% total. The city will provide a 3% COLA. However, the 3% COLA will be an increase to their base salary, and therefore will become PERSable, which means that it will be the number now that will be used to calculate their retirement. So with Bill's case, and I'll go over this again later, but in Bill's case, he makes $50,000 with a 3% increase. That new number will then become the number that that CalPERS will calculate his retirement.
And that's because, I'm sorry, to interrupt. And that's because CalPERS calculates your pension rate at your gross pay. So they look at gross pay. So the 3% is going to actually go towards employees' gross pay, and that's what their pension formula will be based on.
So for the pension, they get the full benefit of the 3%.
They do,
Is bottom
yes.
line.
Correct.
So the net effect for our classic employees after the proposal is a 1% net increase in take-home pay. And I want to emphasize that point because our goal with this proposal was to keep our classic employees whole, and we've done that with this proposal. For Pepper employees, it's a little bit different, but they will also receive the 3% COLA. They will receive, as a result, a 3% increase to their base pay, excuse me. And that will also become the pay that will become PERSable or used for retirement calculation. They will receive the full 3% because they are already paying their full employee portion. So, again, looking at Bill, prior to this proposal, Bill's take-home pay was $45,000, and again, that was based on $50,000, no pension contribution, and 10% taxes. With this proposal, Bill will take home $45,423. So after the 3% COLA, his base pay will become $51,500. And then after the 2% pension contribution and 10% in taxes, he will be taking home, he will be receiving a net increase of $423 per year. Now again, that is not a very large number, but it's not a decrease. And again, the goal was to begin requiring the pension contribution without harming the bottom line for our employees.
Hey, Kevin?
Yes.
They're going to receive this $423 a year, but they're also, in their pension, is going to build up. They're going to receive about $1,500 a year extra, right?
Correct.
Per
So
year?
if you look at the after
I'm
there.
sorry. Maybe I'm getting ahead of you.
Well, no, it's okay. It's all right. So you see the $51,500
Right.
base pay after the COLA. If Bill were to retire right at this point, that would become the number that his retirement would be based on. It would not be based on the $50,000. It would be based on the higher number. So while take-home pay is, only 1%, an increase of 1%, there is still the added benefit of the base salary going up because it's good for his retirement.
Right.
Again, this is for the Pepper employee, Sally. Before this proposal, Sally's take-home pay would be $41,850. And after the proposal, her take-home pay would be $43,106, and that would be a net increase of just over $1,200. And again, the reason why Sally's increase is, 3 times more than Bill's is because she's already paying that 7% contribution. So, but she will be receiving the same retirement benefit as Bill in that her base salary will increase. Okay, so for future considerations, classic employee contributions up to the full 8% employee portion will be considered in future years. However, having said that, it's also important to note that we're also looking at the possibility of increasing our base pay for our employees because we believe that that's important for, our employee recruitment and retention. So, you know, we intend to try to do both. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
Good.
Yes,
Anybody on that end? Go ahead.
questions? No. Questions? No?
I don't have really a question other than a statement, and I've already said everything I had to say at the last two city council meetings as far as how I see this. And overall, I understand, you know, the whole need, you know, for classic employees. I mean, I understand that there, you know, is the deficit. It's just that when you compare the classic to the PEPRA and you put them against each other, I would say that they should be negotiated separately. And I only say this because if I was 25 years on the job and I came on during a time where this was presented to me, that the city of Paramount was going to pay into my pension, a full pension, and I'm looking at another entity, let's say Southern California Gas, and I say, wow, 25 years ago I had the opportunity to go work for the gas company, but now I chose to work for the city of Paramount because this benefit option that they were giving to me at this time was my belief that this was going to carry out. So that would be my only issue, is like if I came on and this was how it was explained to me and this was the benefit, I would want to say, well, now you're taking away that benefit, so what am I getting in return? But I'm not here to negotiate, you know, for the classic employee. I can only say that the way it's presented is for justification, and that's fine. That's what the city has to do, and I understand that completely. I'm just saying that the classic employee, and it's not just for the public works or public safety, there's classic employees all the way up to the city manager level. And so I'm not just negotiating for, you know, those that make under $100,000 or what have you. I'm looking at it across the board, that if I came on, that would have been my expectation. So now if you're going to change it, but because they have no negotiating table, you know, I would say you're going to take away, what are you giving me in return? But because we don't have that, then this is a situation. Understand it. Does it sit well? Not completely, but I understand. So that would be my only statement.
Yes, Councilmember Guillen, I understand that line of thinking, I really do. But I also think that there needs to be an understanding as well that over the years, the city has had to do this. We've had to make adjustments to our budget, to our salary and benefits, depending on our financial situation. And in some cases like this one, we've had to reduce benefits, but there are also multiple times over the years where we've also had the ability to increase benefits for our employees. And the big one that I mentioned was the changeover, again, about 15 years ago, where the city decided to contract for an enhanced pension formula. So it went from the 2% formula to the 2.5% formula, which is you know, a major benefit for employees. In addition to that, you know, COLAs are provided, has been provided, you know, over the years to the employees. More recently, we've included a bereavement benefit to our employees that wasn't in place before. We also just went through this very extensive classification and compensation study where you know, it suggested recommendations for salary increases for our employees, which is something that wouldn't have occurred had we not contracted for that study to happen. So you know, we're looking to move forward with this this pension contribution from our employees because of, you know, again, the public scrutiny, because of you know, it's a responsible thing. You know, it's something that's kind of an industry standard. But as I mentioned, you know, we have tried to provide additional benefits to our employees where we can when resources are available.
I'd like to say, at first I was kind of in agreement with Councilman Guillen on this, on the wages for these employees, but after we've had, 3 weeks of this now, and we've had lots of discussion, and you know, when it was really came right down, it was really explained to me, you know, they really they have a great job in the city. They have a great pension, and the city cannot afford to keep going like we are. Any business cannot keep, everybody makes you pay a little bit of your pension. And I just think that this is the only fair way to do it. And I think the employees understand it from when I've talked to. So I'm happy with it right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would just say, you know, the same thing too. Nobody likes to make cuts, especially when you have the incredible staff that we have, and you are all incredible. The job you do is amazing, but we've been facing this ever since the loss of redevelopment. We've been making cuts. We had to cut our employee force back then. I think we were like 100, 120. And we're down to less than 100 now. We had to implement a UUT tax to be able to keep pace. We're looking at now, you know, a sales tax increase so that we can maintain what we are maintaining in their pensions and their budgets and don't have to look at laying off people. And that's my main thrust in doing this. I would rather bite the bullet and take the heat for the 2% cut than have to tell them you don't have a job anymore. Which is why I'll be working so hard even for the sales tax increase, because we need to keep these employees to keep the city running properly. So to each and every one of you out there who doubt it, wish we could give you the world on a platter, but we just want to, you know, pay you fairly, keep your jobs, keep you, appreciate your service, and trying to do the fiscally responsible thing.
Any further comments?
Just one, and I agree 100%. I understand the dilemma that we're in, and all of these are really good selling points for the justification. But when we look at right now, the way the cost of living is going up, and we're talking about $423 over a year, which comes out to probably $35 to $40, something like that, in their pocket now. I just think it's a little bit difficult to say, look, but someday when you retire, you're going to be based on this amount. If I was the employee, and I'm sure you all agree with this, I'd say, yeah, but what about right now? My insurance is going up, groceries are going up, everything is going up, and the amount that I'm getting is $40 a month. It just makes it a little difficult, and that's why I'm just saying, if we're going to do this, I would have liked to have seen a 1% increase initially, or 1% buy into their pension cost, if we were going to do that at all. And then if we did do the 2, what are they getting in return? That's all. I understand the dilemma, but when you take away, it would be nice to give it in some other aspect, whether it be an extra vacation day, you know, some other type of benefit, but I'm not here to negotiate, so.
And just to clarify that, didn't we just add 2 vacation days? It's one of the things we did do, right?
That is being
Yeah,
proposed.
We did.
Yeah.
Well, it's being proposed, but it's not binding. This, when you're talking about 2% paying, that is going to be continuous and it's going to increase. By giving employees just an additional 2 days off, that is for this year only. It's not across the board, you know, pattern going forward.
That is true.
That is correct. It is for this 1 year. And, you know, it's something that the council could reconsider to in next year's budget as well. That's
Yeah, I appreciate that. And then also, I know that you were confronted with some issues in the Public Works Department about some costs that had gone up for them that they weren't getting, and we've dealt with, fortunately, with that too. So the point is just that we're hearing, which was an increase in their boot allowance because they weren't getting enough to cover what they needed, so we did that. So we are listening, we do hear you, and trying to make those concessions wherever possible.
Difficult all the way around. However, any further questions? Okay, where are we at now?
We're sticking with Kevin. Now he's going to go over the Community Development Department.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Mayor and council members, so moving on. Next are our highlights from the Community Development Department, starting on page number 67. As you know, there are 3 divisions in the department: planning, building and safety, and residential/commercial rehabilitation. With our planning division, there are 2 separate planning efforts: current planning and long-range planning. Starting with current planning, these are projects that may be reviewed over the counter or require discretionary review and approval by our planning commission. Typically, within this section, staff will review about 150 projects per year. And of these, roughly 30 of them will require a conditional use permit, which will have to be taken to the Planning Commission. One project of note that staff has been working on in the current fiscal year and will continue on in FY 2020 is a senior assisted living housing project. Staff is working closely with a developer for the project at the northwest corner of Paramount and 70th Street. It's proposed to be a 3-story, 20-unit development on a 13,000 square foot property. It's planned as a mixed-use development with housing on the upper floors and retail and commercial space on the ground floor. In order to help bring this project to Paramount, the city will be partnering with the developer and contributing about $400,000 to $500,000 in low mod income housing funds, which were left over from the redevelopment agency. Of course, as you know, these are restricted funds and can only be used for this purpose. And with these funds as part of the project, the developer will be required to provide a percentage of the units to low and moderate income tenants. And this is a current photo of what the corner looks like today. And here is a rendering of what the project will look like once it's completed.
Landmarks are slowly leaving Paramount.
What was the slide before? Where was that at? I'm sorry.
This is
Oh, I
Paramount
see.
and
Okay, by the
70th.
church.
By the
okay.
church, yeah, the Methodist church.
Okay.
So this will be a very nice and aesthetically pleasing project at the city's southern entry point and will help to add much needed housing in Paramount, which, as you know, will be helpful considering the state housing crisis. It will eliminate blight and replace the existing bar and auto body repair business at this location. In terms of long-range planning, we are requesting funds for the drafting of 2 specific plan documents that are necessary for guiding the city's long-range planning within Paramount's central business district. These are the Clearwater East and North Paramount Boulevard specific plans. They are very significant projects, as you can see by the cost for consultant services. While restricted general fund plans are available for both projects, the Clearwater East specific plan can only move forward if the SB2 grant funding can be secured. The SCAG grant for the North Paramount Boulevard specific plan is already in place. Staff will continue working with the State Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as SCAG, to determine what additional housing Paramount will be required to contribute in the next cycle of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or what's known as RHNA. In addition, staff will also work on a possible zone change on the west side of Garfield Avenue between Rosecrans and Somerset from M1 light manufacturing to CM commercial manufacturing. This downzoning effort is intended to better reflect the current uses on this segment of Garfield and help buffer nearby residents in the gas streets from industrial uses. This will be a similar effort to the rezoning that the City Council approved last year on Somerset between Texaco and Rosecrans. Finally, we will be requesting $60,000 to prepare downtown design guidelines to help ensure design consistency for developments within our downtown core area. We also plan to use restricted funds for this work as well. Within the budget, there's also a proposal to reorganize the Community Development Department. The proposal entails the reclassification of the current assistant director to the director position. As a result of the change, the current principal planner will be reclassified to assistant director. We will then eliminate the principal planner position, as there's no recommendation to increase the number of department employees. The assistant city manager, yours truly, who currently serves as the department director, will continue to manage the economic development function, but in the administrative services department. So with these major changes, it's also appropriate to revisit the name of the department. With economic development no longer part of the department's responsibilities, changing the department name to Planning Department will more accurately reflect the day-to-day work of the staff. Currently, the department does not have a full-time dedicated director and is managed by the assistant city manager due to layoffs that occurred in 2012 in the wake of the Great Recession. At that time, there was a need to downsize the city organization and have the assistant city manager position assume the role of director for two departments, the Community Development Department and the Administrative Services Department. Since 2012, the city has weathered the storm caused by the Great Recession and again has a need for leadership on a full-time basis because of very demanding work that we are already engaged in and anticipate in the near future, and in order to promote organizational efficiency. The director duties are currently spread among several employees in 3 departments, putting added burden on the community development, finance, and administrative services departments. Also, the community development department is currently and will be undertaking several milestone projects in the city, including those shown here, working to allow more housing projects in Paramount due to the state's housing crisis, responding to state legislative initiatives mandating new local housing rules, working with Metro in the development of the West Santa Ana Branch Light Rail Line and station area development, to propose specific plans to help guide future development in the city's central business district, and a massive multi-year undertaking to update the city's general plan. Obviously, managing the department with projects of such magnitude would not be effective without having a dedicated department director. This proposal will reclassify 2 longtime department staff members that are well respected by their peers throughout the city. This opportunity to move these employees into higher level positions will be very well received by our employees and have a tremendous positive effect on overall morale. The proposal will also allow the assistant city manager, my position, to return to some semblance of normalcy and be responsible for one department and assignments from the city manager. This will allow for more effective use of my time in areas that are becoming more and more complex and require more direct management oversight. These matters include the human resources, risk management, information technology, public information, legislative affairs, and legislative affairs functions. It will also free me to better groom key staff members that are essential for our organization's success. Eliminating the director position after the Great Recession served its purpose at the time and helped the city get through that very difficult period in our country's history. The city is in a new reality today and confronted with a new set of needs that requires a different department organization. This proposal will be largely funded by resources from positions frozen in other departments, as Adriana Lopez mentioned earlier, and will not require any additional expenditures. So, in the end, this reorganization proposal will be cost neutral to the budget. Moving on to our Building and Safety Division, staff continues to be very busy here. Thus far in FY 2019, the city has completed 282 plan check reviews, issued over 1,100 construction-related permits, and completed almost 12,000 inspections. Staff also continues work to rehabilitate business storefronts to eliminate blighted conditions in the city's commercial areas. The goal is to improve appearances and create an environment where existing businesses can thrive and to help attract new businesses. There were 2 projects budgeted in FY 2019. One is the Candiati property on the north end of Paramount Boulevard, which is underway, and the second project is still to be finalized. In FY 2020, 2 projects have been identified. The first is the Douglas Burger building on the southeast corner of Garfield and Somerset, and the second project is the commercial building immediately to the south of Douglas Burger on Garfield. A couple pictures of the existing conditions are shown here with a rendering of the rehabilitated Douglas Burger building. Next, our home improvement program is also included in the FY 2020 budget and will allow for needed improvements for 4 qualifying property owners. On this slide are before and after pictures of projects completed in previous fiscal years, and this shows the positive impact of our home funding program. Also, our economic development work will continue in FY 2020. While city staff will continue with these efforts, as I mentioned earlier, this work will move with my position, the Assistant City Manager position, to the Administrative Services Department as a result of the reorganization. Our economic development work is primarily to retain and attract businesses in Paramount. The city accomplishes this work in many ways, including working directly with property owners, business owners, commercial real estate brokers, and of course, the Paramount Chamber of Commerce and their member businesses. And as I mentioned, the Chamber of Commerce plays a significant role in the city's overall economic development efforts. And in the FY 2020 budget, it also includes continued chamber funding. In FY 2020, the proposed funding level is $40,000. This is the same funding amount that's been approved by the City Council since 2014. The City and Chamber have enjoyed a positive relationship with each other over the many years, which has benefited both businesses and the community as a whole. The Chamber helps the city connect with businesses in Paramount. These connections are valuable for getting businesses involved in community matters like sponsorships for summer concerts, funding scholarship programs, and sponsoring job fairs, to name a few. The Chamber also serves as the business ambassador for helping businesses remain successful in Paramount and for attracting new businesses. In addition, the Chamber works with the Long Beach Small Business Development Center to provide business advice to new and struggling businesses. And by helping businesses succeed in Paramount, it helps bring in much-needed tax revenue for the city. The proposed funding does not include, however, ad space purchases in the Pulse Beat, which can fluctuate between $7,000 and $9,000 per year. And because the topic of chamber funding has come up recently during City Council discussions, staff conducted a survey of area cities to compare funding levels to chambers. As you can see, Paramount is one of many neighboring cities that provide direct funding for its local Chamber of Commerce. Also, the proposed funding for the Paramount Chamber is not the highest, it's not the lowest amongst the 15 cities that are listed. Of the cities that provide funding, the average funding level is $57,636. The city's funding for the Chamber has not increased substantially over the years, and since 2009, the city's average funding to the Chamber is $36,875 per year. So with that concludes my presentation for this department, and I will turn it over to Adriana Figueroa for the Public Works presentation, unless there's any questions.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, just so point of clarification, we're going on our third hour here. We've got probably about 20 to 30 minutes left with 2 presentations. Adriana's going to cover Public Works and capital improvement projects. Then we'll kick it back to Karina for a wrap up. Again, I'm estimating 20 to 30 minutes. If the council wants to take a break or just want to plow through it, you let us know what you want to do. So.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
Yeah, it's fine with me. Let's go.
Okay, Adriana Figueroa.
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the budget in front of you, the Public Works budget, sorry. Thank you. The Public Works budget is found on page 117 of the budget document. The total for fiscal year 2020 in the budget is $16 million, $16.3 million. Of that, $7.5 million is our water utility. This reflects an increase of $718,000 from fiscal year 2019, which is primarily due to increases in salary costs and contractual obligations with regards to cost of living adjustments. Our proposed budget maintains the current level of both in-house and contract services for the upcoming fiscal year. There have been some minor increases in contract costs that are CPI increase related of 2.5% or less, which are reflected in the budget for our fleet maintenance, landscape maintenance, and street sweeping contracts. Public Works is carrying on the city's goal of enhanced sustainability practices and programs. And as you know, this current year, we contracted with the Civic Sparks program to have a part-time fellow conduct our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which will be coming to council in July. For fiscal year 20, we kept the same allocated amount of $26,000 to bring on a part-time administrative intern that would focus primarily on sustainability programs as well as policies and procedures that will help us achieve our sustainability goals. With regards to consulting services, we currently use the services of Parkins and Associates for staff training purposes. But in fiscal year 20, we are requesting to enhance those services to include monthly management and evaluations of all park landscaped areas. They will address irrigation, fertilization schedules, and other program changes to help keep our parks green and thriving. In keeping with our sustainable goals, these consultants will help us move towards greener alternatives with the with the utilization of organic compounds to manage weed abatement citywide. Our budget for fiscal year 20 also includes activities that are needed to maintain the city's Street City USA status. Our administrative intern will assist in this area as well as help us promote our greening efforts. With the passage of Measure W by the voters last November, the city will now have some funding available to meet our stormwater compliance obligations. Measure W does have restrictions with regards to program cost. Only 30% of the funds received can be used for existing stormwater programs, such as watershed group-related costs, which were previously paid for with general fund. The remaining 70% has to be used for new stormwater programs and activities. And with this in mind, we are requesting additional catch basin inserts and the purchase of a street sweeper unit to allow us to clean our hotspot areas more often, as well as after special events, in order to minimize the debris entering our stormwater system. The department has a few capital outlay items that we are proposing in this year's budget. The first one is to install a transfer switch at both the Paramount Community Center and the gym. Both of these locations are designated emergency shelter locations that do not currently have backup generators on site. Installation of a transfer switch will allow us to move an existing generator from another facility to these locations should the emergency need arise, and easily connect to provide power for those seeking emergency shelter. We are also proposing to continue to replace various aging vehicles in our fleet, including a few work trucks and an electric utility vehicle, which we will utilize AQMD funds for. In our water operations budget, we have included the installation of upgraded chemical pump analyzers and the installation of outdoor screens around the chemical tanks to protect from the sun and rain. In 2015, we purchased a standby motor for well 15 to utilize as a backup in case of an emergency breakdown, as well as to regularly rotate so that we can complete preventative maintenance on these motors without causing a disruption to our pumping capabilities. This fiscal year, we are proposing to complete this rotation of the motors and plan to do so every 5 to 7 years or on an as-needed basis. This proposal also includes some necessary upgrades to our SCADA system, which allows water department staff to control water well operations from a central location. I will now move into our capital improvement projects. The CIP budget begins on page 139 of your budget documents, and the city continues to invest in its infrastructure as it's evident in the proposed line of projects for fiscal year 20. The fiscal year 20 budget includes $13.7 million worth of improvements. I should note, though, that all of these projects are funded through restricted and dedicated funds, such as gas tax, county park bond allocations, capital reserves, and also a water infrastructure loan program. A breakdown of these funding sources can also be found on page 140 of your budget document. Paramount has been very proactive in addressing street improvements. Although we are 4.8 square miles, the city has approximately 70 miles of roadway, which include arterials, local streets, and alleyways. Paramount's pavement management system evaluates our street conditions. The most recent report, which was done in 2016 and 17, rates our streets at an overall pavement condition index, or PCI, of 70, which is considered very good. However, this is a work in progress, and as there are still some streets that are considered in fair or poor condition, some of which will be addressed in this upcoming fiscal year. As such, we anticipate $6.3 million worth of improvements in this category. Some of the improvements that are included are arterial streets, neighborhood streets, monument entry signs, and drought-tolerant medians, and we'll go into more detail in the next slides. Utilizing a combination of gas tax funds, such as Prop C and STPL, we will be resurfacing portions of Orange Avenue, which is north of Rosecrans, to the city limit, and it's noted there on the left of your screen. Downey Avenue in the center of your screen, this will be south of Alondra to the city limit, and Alondra Boulevard from Hansacker to the city limit. In terms of neighborhood street improvements, these are local streets that are also critically important to Paramount's infrastructure in response to the needs of our community. This current fiscal year, we addressed the needs on the west side of town. In fiscal year 20, with the additional SB1 funds, we will be moving to the east side and will be resurfacing neighborhood streets west of Lakewood Boulevard and north of Alondra. These include Hayter, Balota, Castana, Oliva, Pimenta, Paseo, Naranja, and Perilla. This again will significantly improve our pavement management system rating, but more importantly, will provide our residents with better streets and much smoother rides. Again, given the added SB1 funds, we will be able to address more local streets in need of resurfacing, as indicated by our pavement management system. And these include DeBee Drive and Walthall Way, which is west of Orange and north of Rosecrans. In the middle of your section of your screen, we will be addressing there Gundry, Motts, and Marcel Street, which are located south of Alondra and east of Orange. And on the right side of your screen, we have Weimer and Jetmore Avenues, which are north of Somerset. The state's water conservation mandates in response to its emergency drought proclamations dried out and essentially killed many medians. This was due to the fact that watering turf in the medians became illegal. The city was proactive in terms of converting these medians to drought-tolerant planting, again, in order to maintain the city's green infrastructure, but most importantly, the image it has worked so hard to establish and maintain. With this in mind, fiscal year 20's budget includes the conversion of the medians on Rosecrans Boulevard utilizing dedicated capital reserve funds, and this is also one of the main entrances to our city and gives us an opportunity to highlight our green image. Similarly here, we will be utilizing dedicated capital reserve funds to install city entry monument signs on Rosecrans as part of our median enhancement project indicated in the previous slide. As you know, Paramount Boulevard was the first major street to receive these monument signs, and the ones on Alondra were done in fiscal year 19. These are, of course, located at the main entrance to the city and define the city's identity, giving it a clean and aesthetically pleasing view of our community. Switching gears to park improvements, we are proposing a total of $430,000 of restricted capital reserve funds to address the remainder of the Paramount Park picnic shelters, as well as the Paramount Pool deck repairs. In terms of the Paramount Park picnic shelters, these are the last two that require replacement of the wood roof structures. There is significant wear and tear on these structures that will now require replacement. With regards to the Paramount Pool, as David indicated, we're looking at Measure A funds. The pool was renovated in 2006 and it's essentially used year-round by our residents and, of course, students who utilize it throughout the school year. As you can see from the pictures, it is in desperate need of replastering. There are also some deck repairs that are needed to portions of the deck, which again reflect the wear and tear given how heavily utilized the pool is. The fiscal year 20 budget also includes approximately $258,000 worth of improvements, utilizing for the most part dedicated capital reserve funds. These are some of the highlights from this category, and I'll go into detail for each on the following slides. The first is the bus stop design. The design that was used for the downtown area has been very well received by our residents and has complemented our downtown area improvement significantly. With this in mind, we are proposing to use $10,000 of additional Prop A funds to design a smaller scale bus stop shelter that can be used citywide, which will replace the existing bus shelters as you can see in the image in the middle of the screen. I should note that these are additional Prop A funds that have been realized given the recent Paramount in Motion program that our Community Services and Recreation Director outlined in his presentation. Next is our Civic Center fountain, which was built 15 years ago in 2004. It has begun to show some wear and tear, particularly with the tiles in the fountain that are no longer available for purchase. Additionally, there is quite a bit of concrete work that needs to be done as part of these repairs. Once again, this is one of our main icons in the city, and it is adjacent to our famous hay tree and the center of attention as it highlights the entrance to City Hall and the Clearwater building. Staying in the Civic Center area, as you know, the Clearwater building has received 2 phases of roof repairs in the last couple of years. We are proposing the 3rd and final phase of roof repairs for fiscal year 20. In terms of water, the fiscal year 20 budget includes approximately $6.7 million worth of improvements, most of it utilizing a low-interest iBank loan for the construction of Well 16. The budget also includes annual installation of service and hydrants, as well as our annual valve replacement program. The city was very proactive in its long-term planning for its water system infrastructure improvements. Imported water sources have become more and more expensive and highly unreliable given the state's climate and drought conditions. Paramount began to invest in its groundwater infrastructure years ago, and that is now paying off. Even though the price of imported water has gone up significantly in the last few years, Paramount has been able to minimize that impact with the use of additional groundwater production. The drilling phase of this well was done utilizing former redevelopment agency bond proceeds, and the equipping phase will be done using the low-interest iBank loan designed for municipal water agencies. We are currently finalizing the plans and specs for the equipping of Well 16, which will go out to bid shortly, and we anticipate being up and running by late summer, beginning of fall of 2020.
Adriana, before you go on, I just want to give the council just a little bit of a tidbit of information, what Adriana just said. Relying less on purchasing imported water, just to give you a breakdown on how much it costs to buy water rather than to pump it out of the ground. To buy water, it's about $1,200 an acre foot, $1,200, keep that in mind. To pump the water, it's $366. So cost to import water, they call it import, but you're actually buying it from the California Aqueduct or from the Colorado River, it's extremely expensive. So we're trying to lessen our reliance on that water source outside and use the water source that we have underneath our ground. So
Have we already secured the funds to finish this well?
we have, yes. It's through a loan through a bank called the iBank Infrastructure Bank. It's a state-approved. How would you explain iBank? It's a state.
One question, how much are we purchasing outside from what we pump?
According to the numbers here, 200 acre feet versus 5,888. So we import 200 acre feet. Is that what's we're predicted?
100.
We're predicting to pump 5,883. So quite a difference. So that's why we're trying to keep it down a lot more. So.
Right, that is correct, and I think it will go down in the next few years.
I think they said, yeah, when we originally did the well, that when it comes online, it would almost take us completely away from
Completely away.
having to purchase.
That is correct, up by double digits.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this basically concludes my presentation, but I'm available for any comments or questions.
Any further questions? We'll do it that way this time. Further questions? I think you're right, that we did hear, but talking about the imported water going way high. They're anticipating that, so sooner we can get that done, it'll be better. No
Well, this
questions?
was how many year project?
Probably 4 years, Karina?
I think
say
2
about 4
years ago, we started the drilling, and
But-
and then last year, we obtained the funding from the iBank, and so I think in a few months, we can start the actual construction of the well, is that correct?
We're actually finalizing the plans and specs, and so we will go out to bid. And once we award, the construction time is typically a year.
But prior to, though, 2 years ago, we went through the property acquisition, so that was another, so it's been about 4 years to acquire the property and everything like that.
Well,
Yeah.
it was good recommendation from staff, or we'd be 4 more years behind, and who knows what the potable water is going to be then,
Price would be
right?
very,
I should say, coming in as a new member of this team, the city was very visionary in really investing in infrastructure improvements, particularly with water, because that's really the way to go.
Yeah.
okay, any further questions or comments? Okay. Go ahead.
Real quick. I just want to thank everybody for their presentations, Adriana, Dave, the other Adriana. And while I'm on the subject of thanking Adriana Lopez, it was brought to my attention that when we praised everybody for the parade well done, we gave Dave all kinds of kudos, and we didn't say thank you to our sworn-in civilians in public safety for the job you did the day of the parade. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before I forget. So anyway, thank you, everybody, all the directors, for the job that you did. I just want to say that overall, I think this is a really a good budget. There's some critical sticking points that, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I've already told you all what I think they are. I think overall it looks pretty good. And I just want to say that if I vote no, it's only because I know it's going to pass, and I hope that we can revisit some of these items in next year's budget. That's it.
Okay, any other comments?
We're
We'll move
still
along.
moving on, okay.
Okay,
turn it
moving
back over
on.
to
I want to
Karina.
continue Adriana's presentation on water utility, only that we are now focusing on the financial aspect of water utility. You can find the information on page 62 of the document, and continue on page 132 and going forward. To start off, I want to show you our charts for our water rates. As you always know, we are always maintain one of the lowest in the entire region. When we compare ourselves to 15 water agencies, we're at the bottom. We're assuming a single-family residential family account that utilize about 20 units every 2 months. Each unit is equal 748 gallons. Assuming that consumption, the monthly bill for a single-family residential account in Paramount is about $51.71. As compared to other agencies, it can go up to $163.25 with Liberty Utilities. With that said, we know that our rates are not sustainable. And we are currently, let's look at this slide that we're actually presenting a deficit. This is not the first time we're presenting a deficit. It's been a number of years. We talk about the iBank loan that we obtained. We actually started paying debt service on that. That's about $350,000 additional cost that we need to absorb starting this year. And so we know this is not sustainable, but again, we are conducting a comprehensive rate study currently. This deficit here reflects estimates based on pre-rate increase. Once the rate study is completed, we will present the rates to the council, and upon approval, we should have better financial forecasts for you in the next few years. I want to wrap up the budget going back to the financials and changes that we have made in fiscal year 19. As we said earlier, the budget begins in March, and we pretty much wrap up in May. And so since then, we have seen some changes that happened that will impact the bottom line. These are the few changes that's going to impact the current year and fiscal year 2019, and I want to bring it to your attention. One of which is the Class and Com final payment, which is $15,000. As you know, this is a project that started about a year and a half ago and finally finalized. So the final payment actually is a carryover from previous year's budget. Also, we have experienced some emergency repairs, about $10,000. Also, another minor repair at Clearwater Building and increase in uniform. And so that total about $29,900 we're adding to the current year's budget. Is a history of general fund surpluses or deficits at the end of current year, fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020, we are breaking even. This is a forecast based on what we know today. After we close the books later in the year, when we present to you the CAFR, the annual financial report in December, we hope that we have better numbers. When we factor in the surplus or deficit, this chart shows you the fiscal year 2020 ending balances for different type of funds. These balances are funds that we save up for rainy days, should the economy take a downturn. In the general fund, we'll end fiscal year 2020 with about $12.7 million. Restricted funds, we have a balance about $7 million, and water fund, we have about $3.6 million. For the successor agency, we will continue to wind down the business of the former redevelopment agency. We'll continue to fulfill the responsibility of the bond issues and third-party contracts and agreements. The budget reflects the enforceable obligations on our recognized obligation payment schedule, so-called ROPS. And the budget also reflects the property tax that we expect to receive to be able to pay for those obligations. Effectively last July, the county took over our oversight board's function. However, we are still responsible for the managing of funds and the submission of the ROPS. As for the Housing Authority, the budget is a holdover from the former redevelopment agency, Lomart Housing Fund, which we have very limited way to use this money. In fiscal year 2020, we plan to use it for a senior housing project that Kevin presented earlier. This concludes the entire presentation. All the department heads and I, we are available to answer any questions. And we are recommending the City Council read by title only and adopt all these resolutions.
So, Mr. Mayor, what we do need from you all, as I mentioned in my introduction to you, and it's been a long presentation, so I appreciate you going through it. We do need all the ordinance, all the motions on all the resolutions that are before you. The first one being the overall budget. Then we have a state limit that we have to adopt, which is B, and then our policy of investment. The new pension reform that we want is item number D, and then public safety service agreements is E. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. We're still on resolution A here. Do you have any questions or comments at this point?
I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Been moved by Lemon, second by Hoffmeyer, to read by title only and adopt resolution number 19.021. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian?
No.
Councilmember Lemmons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Hansen?
Yes. We don't, well, okay, we just can go to this one now?
Move item B.
We do got B individually, right?
Yes,
So
right.
resolution
I'll
number
second that.
19.023, adopting the GAN appropriations limit for fiscal year 2020.
I moved and Daryl seconded.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay, so you announced that it's moved and seconded. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian?
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Hansen?
Yes. Resolution number 19.022, adopting the statement of investment policy for the city of Paramount for fiscal year 2020.
Move it.
Second.
Motion by Lemon, second by Gillen, read by title only, and adopt resolution number 19.022. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian?
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Hansen?
Yes. Resolution number 19.025, setting the percent at 6% and effective date of July 6, 2019 for employer-paid member contributions.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Lemon, second by Hoffmeyer, to read by title only, adopt resolution number 19.025. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian?
No.
Councilmember Lemmons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Hansen?
Yes. What are we? Approval of public safety service agreements, fiscal year 2019, 2020. All city management services, school crossing guard services, David Brightman, Detective Bureau Consultant, County of Los Angeles Municipal Law Enforcement Services.
Move it.
Second.
Been moved by Lemon, seconded by Hoffmeyer to approve and authorize the mayor or the city manager to enter into agreements with All City Management Services Incorporated, David Brighton, and the County of Los Angeles. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Mayor Hansen.
Yes. Before we move on, I too would like to comment all the department heads, commend them, especially Karina. I know you guys have been working on this for quite some time. It's very difficult, and I think that I can speak for everybody in that we appreciate all the time to try to make all this work out. Hopefully we can for the next fiscal year, and maybe we won't have a deficit. We'll be okay. So thank you all very much for your time and effort.
I also just want to thank everybody. You've done a great job.
Any further comments?
I would
Okay,
just like to add my thanks too.
Okay, I
and,
thought so. It was waiting.
And especially to Kevin for all of the time that you spent on the employee contributions program. I know, I think it was 3 hours, and it was very detailed, and there were a lot of questions, so I really appreciate that. And Karina for sitting down and going line by line through the budget with me and explaining all of those accounting terms that I don't necessarily get. Thank you too for your time, and thank you to all the department heads for your presentations. They were excellent and thorough.
Okay, comments from council members or committee reports?
I just want to say that I'd like to send my condolences to a family in Paramount. Officer Ramirez from the LAPD died last week. She lived in Paramount. She had a traffic accident approximately 4 years ago in which she was seeking therapy and all kinds of stuff for her back. Then she went in for surgery and died of complications. And she spent her entire life here in the city of Paramount. She served as a Los Angeles police officer, and she leaves behind a husband and children. So I just want to send my condolences out to the family.
What was her name?
Her last name is Ramirez. They call her SB. It's Esperanza Ramirez.
Okay. Committee reports or comments any further down this way? Vice Mayor Hoffman?
No comment.
I don't think I have anything either. I will report maybe a little bit on the mosquito situation. Right about, as of last week, it's going along about normal. Out in Palm Springs, that whole area out there, they're having a little uptick, actually, in mosquitoes that have tested positive for West Nile. So, but here in our whole area, we're doing okay, pretty much normal. So, other than that, I don't have anything. Yes.
One thing, well,
More
not in my
mosquitoes?
backyard. I'm still getting eaten up. I can't
Oh.
find anything. No, I was just going to make a suggestion, if it's okay with Councilmember Guillen, we can adjourn in her name, and that
Yeah,
way
we
she'll
can
get
do
a
that.
letter
Awesome.
stating that.
Well, she won't, but her family will.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
She probably will know that. Staff?
No, sir.
No comments?
Just thank you very much for the compliments. They are a very hardworking group of people here, and I appreciate every hour they spent here, which is many.
Okay, then. This meeting is adjourned to the meeting on July 2nd, 2019, and this meeting will be adjourned officially in your friend's memory, the officer from LAPD.
Hey, Ramirez.
Okay, we'll call the adjourned meeting of the successor agency of Paramount Redevelopment Agency to order. We have roll call members, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Here.
Councilmember Lemmons,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer,
Here.
Mayor Hansen.
Here. Public comments?
No, sir.
We already did all of the other stuff, did we not?
We sure did,
Yeah.
budget. But we do need a resolution.
So move resolution 19002.
Second.
Moved by Hoffmeyer, second by, or moved by Lemon, second by Hoffmeyer, was that what
Yeah,
it was?
yeah.
Sorry, I got confused. to approve resolution, or resolution SEPRED 19.002. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian?
Yes.
Councilmember Lemmons?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hoffmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Hansen?
Yes. Any further comments? No? This meeting is adjourned also to the July 2, 2019 meeting right here at 6 p.m.
I'd call the order of the Paramount Housing Authority meeting. Could I have a roll call, commissioners, please?
Commissioner Gian?
Here.
Commissioner Lemmons?
Second?
Moved in seconds. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gian?
Yes.
Commissioner Lemmons?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hansen?
Yes.
Chair Hoffmeyer?
Yes. No comments from staff or commissioners. We'll adjourn this meeting.
Okay.